They said they loved me and then burned it all down on the way out. Spiteful ex stories. During my friend's divorce, the ex took him to court for everything she could get, including his dog that he'd had since he was 15. She was able to get the judge to give her custody of his dog Alice. A week or so later, a box was mailed to his parents' house with his name on it. When he opened it, it was full of ashes. The witch had the dog put to sleep at a vet, cremated, put the ashes in a box, and mailed it to him. My ex filed a bogus restraining order not allowing me to see my son, who I was taking care of while she was at work. She filed that I was going to end him and her and then take him overseas? The court accepted the order. 6 months later, she called me saying, "You need to start watching the baby again." So I start watching my son again, and then I ask her if my son could spend at least one night a week with me. You see, I was retired from the police force due to an on-the-job injury, so I had the benefit of spending time with my son. She flat out refused. Long story short, after all the false allegations she'd started about me, false kidnapping reports, and having the police knock down my door and my son and I in shock, years of court proceedings, and even though the courts and social worker found her to be a scorned woman and a rampant liar, they awarded her full custody. It's been 5 years, 6 months, 7 days, and 16 hours, 4 minutes and counting since I last saw or spoke with him. I cannot see my son, who I still pay $400 a month in child support to, and he only lives 10 minutes away from me. Attempted self-deletion, or at least they claimed to, multiple times purely to get my attention. The first time it happened, I just called an ambulance, only to have the police call me back 20 minutes later saying she was clearly making the whole thing up. She also regularly threatened to crash her car with both of us in it and to kill my family. Once tried to shank me with a kitchen knife. Once we broke up, she told all of our mutual friends that I was a bullying, cheating monster, neither of which is even remotely true. By the time I realized what she was doing, most of them were already refusing to talk to me. Of that entire group, she manipulated all but 2 or 3 into hating my guts. My ex-wife started doing the deed with my best friend of 14 years as soon as we separated. But I allow the possibility that it happened before that. Not only did she crush my soul, but took my best friend who I looked up to. He was also married. I hear they had a baby now and he's still married. Whatever. I hope they both die a horrible shark-related death. Yeah, I don't know how you can be best friends with someone for that long, hear about potentially them making each other miserable during the divorce, and then decide that your best course of action should be to throw another spanner into the works. And judging by the fact that he was already married, he just seems like a quality bloke all round, doesn't he? My ex-girlfriend and I shared a bank account after living together for 2 years. I know, the groundwork for a happy ending, right? Well, she was saying she had a job when she didn't and was lying about money while I was working every day. So I broke it off with her and moved out and went to the bank to close our account. I was told both parties had to be there to close the account, but she wasn't coming around for a while. So I just took my name off the account and opened my new one. Bank of America wouldn't screw me, right? Well, fast forward 3 months later and I had a few grand saved up and I was doing well. She wanted to get back with me even though she now had a boyfriend. I had no interest in that. Well, I went out to get some Gatorade before Ultimate Frisbee and none of my cards are working. I call Bank of America and they tell me that there's fraudulent activity. Yep, my ex had written $40,000 in fraudulent checks from our old account. The bank saw that I used to be on that account and drained it completely to cover the $40,000. I'm not a guy that has credit cards, so this was my only source of money, period. I was flat broke and it sucked. I took her to court, but she doesn't work, so I hope one day to get a few dollars of that back. My ex wrote $40,000 in fraudulent checks from an account we used to have together, and the bank took all of my money too. My ex set everything I'd left at the house on fire. She bragged about it over the phone later. Even your Game Boy Advance. Wait, my Game Boy Advance? Yes. Which, my Game Boy Advance is sitting right next to me. You set your Game Boy Advance on fire. Around 8 years ago, while still dating her, she tricked me into getting her pregnant. She sabotaged the birth control, and as soon as she got pregnant, cut all contact. I tried to remain civil with her, and I have been up to this day, but she quite clearly told me the only reason she started dating me in the first place is because she wanted a child, and I'd never factored into her plans. When my daughter was born, she didn't put me on the birth certificate and put the father as unknown. I took her to court multiple times, but she denied paternity was mine, and the courts apparently couldn't force a DNA test. She eventually moved and completely disappeared off the radar. I have an 8-year-old daughter out there somewhere who I've only seen once. I think about her every day. I was falsely accused of domestic attacks and had every journal and photo of my childhood taken from me. Also, every piece of physical belongings that I'd had at the time. It all came out in the wash on the violence thing. The judge started to see it was all a hoax, but damn, it was the most trying 6 months of my life. Me and the lady split a few months ago. Out of nowhere, I got a random text from her, which happened to be a picture of her hand grasping a male organ of impressive stature. She began to explain how thankful she was I broke up with her so she could find such an implement. I wanted to be mad, but I couldn't. I just kind of stared at the picture while thinking, good for her. That doesn't sound like she was over you. Agreed. He should have responded with, glad to know you still think about me whenever you do the deed. My buddy's ex cheated on him with our roommate, then turned into a super vindictive witch when he found out. The day she moved out, she filed a restraining order against him, claiming that he was prone to violent outbursts and, quote, a danger to himself and others. One of the most level-headed guys I know, who got cheated on with one of his best friends, and then, with her shiny new restraining order, she weaseled her way onto the volunteer staff at the anime convention he attended each year. She got in a week before, and got his admission revoked, and he couldn't get a court date fast enough to call her on her bullcrap before the con. Once he did get one, the judge basically told her to get the F out with that, because my friend brought a whole crapstorm of evidence with him. One of my sister's exes did a horrible thing in a very psychotic fashion. She found a wet shopping bag on her doorstep containing her drowned cat. My ex is a physician and addict, so she can manipulate with the best of them. When we decided to split, it was quite clear who was in the wrong, and we agreed that the debt she'd accumulated through her multiple tours in rehab, well north of 100K, should stay with her. We didn't have any children or any joint property to cause any fits over, so the divorce seemed pretty straightforward. She got a lawyer to help push it through, and I was going to try not to get one of my own to save costs. I know, obvious mistake. I was supposed to go to her attorney's office to sign some paperwork, but I was having trouble reaching someone at the office to make a time to stop by. Her lawyer emailed her that day saying that he hadn't heard from me yet, and she forwarded this email to me without realizing that she was forwarding me the entire email chain that she'd had with her counsel. Whoops! In the email, she very clearly stated that she wanted to slap me with the rehab debt, stating that I was complicit in her substance use, which is all totally false. Needless to say, I went pretty crazy and immediately hired the most cutthroat lawyer I could find in my area. That guy was awesome and cheap, and he routinely put her in her proper place. This wasn't spite directed at me, but it was pretty narcissistic and ridiculous. My ex broke up with me and took our jointly owned car to another state. Proceeded to lose a series of jobs and fail to help pay any of our joint debt. The agreement had been that he'd pay it all, as I was a poor grad student and he was supposedly walking into a 6-figure salary. I had to track down his mum to get my name off his car loan, as he wouldn't answer my emails about it. I had to pay the remaining joint debt off myself slowly to preserve my credit. It was like 16K. Then he had the gall to come to Reddit and post an Ask Me Anything about how he purposefully left his high-paying job to follow his dream and become a penniless writer, despite Reddit pretty much immediately calling him out for receiving unemployment benefits, which you don't get if you leave your job. He brought up our relationship in the Ask Me Anything thing, and mentioned how he had paid all of our joint debt himself when he left since he could afford it and I was just a student. After all the time and saving it took me to get rid of that debt myself, that was a pretty crappy thing to read. Pretty much the whole AMA was very self-congratulatory like that. A lot of people bought into it and stroked his ego, and it made me realize just how fraught with single-sided bullcrap that subreddit might be. I had an ex spread a rumor around my small hometown that I'd physically bullied her throughout our relationship. I couldn't figure it out at first, but all of my platonic girlfriends suddenly started hating and avoiding me when I'd visit. When I called her out on it at a party, she just started laughing and said, "Oh yeah, I was just mad at you and told people that. Isn't that funny?" All I could do was shake my head and say, "No, witch, that's not funny at all." I still have to correct people to this day, 2.5 years later. Oh my god, you see that's not even remotely funny as a joke. And women like this using lies of physical battery to punish people can really hurt the credulity of women who need to report actual awful spouses to the law. You should always believe women, but not everyone agrees with that, and this ex would be one of the cases they point to as an example of why maybe you shouldn't. I got effed by both my ex and my $5,000 divorce lawyer. We got an agreement that she didn't want anything from me except $1,000 a month in child support, and that's after I came home from work a couple of months earlier to find nothing but an old chair in my house. She had the movers come in and take everything while I was at work. I said, okay, and we left it at that, waiting for the court date where her lawyer was supposed to bring our agreement to the judge. Anyway, I show up in court with my lawyer, we go in front of the judge, and her lawyer goes, we want child support, alimony, and we want the husband to pay for the remainder of the car loan, 3 years, on my wife's car, and then transfer the car to the wife's name, and we also want the husband to pay for my services because he was the one who filed for divorce, which forced the wife to borrow $5,000 from her parents to pay for my services. The judge goes, sounds good, we're done. Meanwhile, my lawyer didn't open his mouth or look up from whatever the frick he was reading during the entire court session. And this fudgewit had the audacity to send me a card later, congratulating me on the positive outcome of my divorce case. So for the next year, I paid 75% of what I made, automatically taken out of my paycheck after tax, leaving me with nothing. Sold my car, moved out of my apartment, and couch surfed for a while. The day the ex received her last alimony check, we were only married for 2 years, so I paid alimony for half of that, she married my ex-best friend, which was why I filed for divorce in the first place. It took me 5 more years to pay off her car and her lawyer, so now I only have 7 years of child support left, even though the kid spends 5 days a week with me. And she is currently on husband number 4. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Well, mine gave me warts downstairs after she cheated on me with just a friend. Quality lady. Well, here's one of the worst I've witnessed. I started dating a girl just out of high school. Her ex-boyfriend was a violent, awful human being. When he found out that we were dating, he tried to befriend me. I was unaware of his habits until he tried to beat me up one day. That didn't work out too well on his end, so the next attack was to call the cops and my parents and report that I was selling green herb. That didn't work out either, and no substances were found. He had found out that I smoked in the week where we were friends. His final FU was putting her brother in the car with him and driving off a bridge. He ended things for both himself and her brother. We found out later he had been befriending her brother too, so there was no real suspicion when they got in the car together. Insane? Maybe. Frickin' evil? Absolutely. Manipulative and evil to the core. She hasn't been the same since. We still live in the same town, and I see her occasionally. 3 years after I broke up with my ex, she found out who my new girlfriend was, somehow got her phone number and bought up a disposable phone and texted the new girlfriend that I was cheating on her. She used a different name and used her previous knowledge of a birthmark location and what I like to do in bed to effectively throw my new girlfriend into a rage, and she didn't believe me due to the contents of the message. Forever alone. My first serious live-in girlfriend cheated on me with several of her past partners. I could never catch her doing it, but for a variety of reasons, I did know. I was nuts about her though, and she lied like a politician. Finally, my best friend's older brother nailed her on purpose to prove it. Yeah, thanks for that, I guess. So I picked up my crap and left peacefully. But I'd forgotten to grab my art portfolio from behind the couch. I called her that afternoon and said I'd be right down to get it. As I pulled into the driveway, she dropped the lit match onto the gasoline-soaked pile of my entire life's collection of artwork. I never did another piece of artwork again. F that C word. Right after high school, there was a girl who liked me, but the feeling wasn't mutual. She decided to cope with my rejection using the means at her disposal. She was an assistant manager at a video rental chain. I'd stopped renting there, but my rental account was still open. She started checking out movies under my name that I'd never actually borrowed. They'd never get returned, so massive late fees plus replacement fees showed up on my account. She also changed my mailing address in their system so that I'd never receive the notices in the mail. It wasn't until close to a year later that I started getting phone calls from debt collection agencies. It took years to get them to stop, and it negatively impacted my credit because I had no proof that the debts weren't valid, whereas the video chain had computer records of the rentals. I dated a hot and crazy girl in high school. I thought that I'd be super cool and take her out to my parents' lake house. After we broke up a few weeks later, she and her boyfriend, who she'd dated before, during, and after we were dating, rented a U-Haul van and cleaned out the house of all the furniture. She even stole my 8-year-old little sister's bunk bed. The only thing left was a fridge because they couldn't get it through the door. Dad found the house trashed and he was furious. We didn't find this out until a couple of years later when her boyfriend effed up and got caught. He admitted to stealing our stuff since the cops were able to match the serial numbers on the washer and dryer. I knew something was up when she called me up around Thanksgiving before we got the news about her boyfriend and said that she really loved me and really missed me. Stupid me, I thought this girl was coming around and we'd get back together and life would be great. 2 weeks later, I was giving my report to a detective and she's now currently in jail. In hindsight, insurance paid us for all of the stuff stolen, which was worth more than the current condition the stuff was in. The cops said that all of our stuff was messed up beyond repair. She's still currently in jail, by the way, and I am now married to the most beautiful woman in the world, and she's my best friend with a baby on the way. Well, not me, but my mother-in-law. She was married for a couple of months and got pregnant. Her husband told her to get it terminated. Being in a small town, she had to drive several hours to the nearest clinic. She waited outside for an hour or two and just couldn't go through with it. So she calls him to tell him she can't do it, and he hangs up on her. After a long drive home, she comes home to an empty home. Everything, including the ice trays in the fridge, are gone. The only things left are a rocking chair and some of her clothes. He took some of them. He never showed back up. As an add-on, she had the baby girl. That girl grew up and I married her. We got the chair for our kids. It's a nice chair. Huh. Sounds like although there was likely financial hardship on the road to where everyone in the story is today, it kinda went the best way it could for this lady. Got rid of a brutally callous man who didn't have the same aims as her, has a presumably loving daughter and grandkids as well. Win-win, I think. Hope the guy learned to be a human eventually. She took my adding machine. That thing was an antique too. I never got it back. That calculating witch. I dated this guy for about 3 months, from December 2008 through February 2009, and then I broke it off because he was trying to control me and I wasn't going to go through that again. Before we broke up, he was living with me and subletting his apartment. Well, once we broke up, I wanted him gone. Unbeknownst to me, he had gotten himself a residency permit, which meant I couldn't legally kick him out. I spent 9 months fighting this. In the meantime, he'd slap himself in the face until it was bright red, and then call the cops and say I was attacking him. I'd get arrested and then let out the next day when he decided not to press charges. He did this about once a month. The apartment was in my name, so I couldn't just leave it without penalty, so I was essentially stuck. He had manipulated the police department into believing him, so nothing I tried to get him to leave worked. Finally, in December of 2009, I'd met a new guy. And, well, the ex decided that if he couldn't have me, no one could. He deadbolted my bedroom while I was sleeping, so I couldn't get out, and he told everyone I knew that I had herpes and had a history of getting knocked up and then getting rid of the children, which essentially ended my new relationship. I just couldn't take it anymore. I called my dad, had him come pick me up, I lived 1,300 miles from home, broke my lease and got the F out of there. In short, my ex manipulated the cops into thinking that I beat him, had me arrested a few times, locked me in my room, and ruined my new relationship. Today I learned all of my past relationships have been sane and nobody on the internet understands what theft or destruction of property is. My ex wrote a poem about my member being small. It was like 10 verses long, and it was actually a very good poem. She sent it to all of my friends, but not to me. I found out 5 years later that she'd done this. My friend showed it to me. She'd sent it via MSN and email to everyone, and I was like, damn, she owned me. Luckily though, I did the deed with her sister a year prior to discovering the poem. Not even to spite my first girlfriend or anything. Her sister just really liked me. So I guess we're even? I don't know. And anyway, it's not that small. It's fine. She accused me of the R word. She said that every time we'd done the deed in our 5-year relationship, it was the unspeakable act, and that I hit her regularly. Despite absolutely no evidence, the police had to pursue it as they're bound to investigate every accusation of that kind. No evidence, and the case was dropped. When my ex and I were going through a divorce, he decided to share with me that a year and a half prior, he had in fact taken my dog, who was 14 and I'd had her since she was 6 weeks old, to work with him, dropping her off in the middle of nowhere on the way. The dog was afraid of him, but he lured her into his truck with the words that every dog loves. Bye-bye. He even left the gate open to make it look like she got out on her own. I searched for that damn dog for months. And during that time, he'd sat back and watched me cry, put up posters, gone to every animal shelter around me. I hate that monster. Not only for that reason, he's also a religious weirdo. I worked night desk at my dorm. My ex brought guys home and had me sign them in. Then, before my shift was over, she walked the guy out with her hair all messed up and in her super short shorts and singlet. I look back now and laugh. Okay. Oh, you know, nothing too out of the ordinary. I came home one evening and found a note that she didn't love me anymore. She had moved in with her parents and would appreciate it if I could be gone during the upcoming weekend so she could collect her stuff. Stunned and stupid as I was, I complied, came back home Sunday evening to find the place completely empty. She took everything except one thing, a 22-volume Britannica that she had bought the month before, despite my protests, and she had only paid the first installment for it. When I asked for explanation, she told me that since I had a job and a salary, and she was a student, I'd simply be able to replace all the furniture and pay off the encyclopedia. First thing I did, the books, bought in her name, were sold and I spent the money on a trip to Paris. Which? What's the most pathetic thing you've seen someone do for attention? I knew a woman who, as a college student, went to Australia for one semester. She came back with the accent and just kept it. When I knew her, this had been going on for more than 5 years. She was from North Carolina. "So, you blokes and Sheilas, what are your stories?" Worst one I've got is an old friend who lied about being in the parachute regiment of the British Army. He spouted his usual, yeah, we parachuted into X and Y with GPMGs, and all that, yada yada yada. No tactical drops have been executed in years, by the way. I just let him roll with it. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him on the principle that he was a tosser. Anyway, we ended up going out one night, and a couple of my friends, who happened to be paras and went into the regiment roughly the same time he did, came drinking with us. Anyway, sparking up some conversation. The two were in on this about army days, and this one frickin' guy starts chucking it in. Yep, I was this and that. And then the two guys stop deadpan and go, "So, you just said you jumped in Nation X. First bat never jumped there." This being said, as they both rolled up their right sleeves, and there, proudly displayed, was the para logo with "First" underneath. I've never seen someone retract into his chair so quickly. After we left the bar, he decided to go home as he wasn't feeling well. Always funny to remind him of that when his ego gets a tad too big. When I was in high school, there was a pretty bad bus accident where a bus driver fell asleep at the wheel and a lot of people were hurt, some very badly. One girl was in a coma and sustained brain damage, another walks permanently with a limp and has facial scarring, one guy had the bones in 2 of his fingers crushed and now the mobility of his hand is permanently affected. I went to a really small high school and it was a pretty big deal. It was a national news story for a few days as well. If you're curious, pretty much everyone on that bus that crashed sued anyone who was remotely associated with the accident, from the owner of the bus company to the teachers who were on the bus with the students. And some people got quite a bit of money. Anyway, there was one girl who claimed all sorts of damage from the accident. She came back to school wearing a brace on her leg and her arm, and would cry if anyone mentioned the accident and made up terrific stories about the crash itself and the nightmares she was having. She would just go on and on in a really ridiculous way about the accident. Came to find out she wasn't even on the bus that crashed. She was on another bus. In the scramble of craziness after the accident, she went to the accident and pretended to have been on the bus and made up all of her injuries. Looking back, she was clearly damaged, just not by that and not just physically. She was always just kind of a little off. This is just the only really specific incident I can point to illustrate her strangeness. Oh boy, I hate everything about this, including the fact that the teachers somehow got sued into the bargain here when they were likely just as badly off as the kids. But yeah, if you see a mass tragedy and get the urge to run over, lie down and fake cry just to get some much-needed validation, just don't. This girl in high school I was kind of friends with liked this guy in her math class. To get his attention, she fell out of her desk in the middle of class. Then she did it the next day, and the next day. That was her plan to get him to ask her to prom. It didn't work. On sister's wedding day, our aunt put herself into diabetic shock on purpose. An ambulance came, she could have died. My sister had to administer her until the ambulance showed up. The sister was a nurse. All because people were paying attention to the bride instead of my aunt. Jeez, that's terrible. I was playing cello at the wedding where the bride's mom apparently disapproved of the wedding and had threatened to make a fuss. She wore black. Then during the whole ceremony she cried loudly, shook her head and muttered at the vows. Turns out she'd done this at all of her children's weddings, so I think she might just be a terrible person. Claimed to be a vampire for 5 to 10 years. They started in high school and continued into her 20s. She did this until her fiancé threatened to leave her. My girlfriend's sister, we'll call her Kerry for the sake of these stories, is the queen of doing unnecessary, pathetic things to get attention. She overdramatizes everything and does whatever she can to bring the attention to her. When there's nothing to overdramatize, she just makes stuff up. About herself, her family, about her friends, about whoever or whatever. Just blatantly lies for attention. My favorite example? A guy Kerry barely knew in college, who was several years older than her, but ran in a similar social circle, unexpectedly committed self-deletion after a fight with his then-girlfriend one night. It was a really sad event on campus. He was a really great guy that was widely known and widely liked. However, he was diagnosed mentally ill with depression and schizophrenia. He was off his meds for some reason and he was drinking heavily with disastrous results. All of a sudden, Kerry is hyper-depressed and telling everyone that would listen that she was having a secret romantic relationship with him, that they were in love and that he was planning on leaving his girlfriend for her, and that they were planning on eloping together. She started telling everyone about how much she missed him, how she couldn't stand to be alone, yada yada yada. The guy's actual girlfriend caught wind and confronted Kerry about it publicly. Kerry started to back off, saying, "Okay, maybe I overstated how involved we were. I made the stuff up about eloping, but we were definitely hooking up and he told me he loved me." When pressed further, she started to ramp down her story more and more. Okay, we only hooked up once, but he said he really liked it and wanted to do it again." Then, "Okay, we never hooked up, but we spent a lot of time together privately and I really cared about him." It finally came down to, "Okay, fine, I only met him like once at a party and we barely talked, but I liked him and wish I could have spent more time with him. Are you happy? Why do you have to be so mean? I was just trying to feel like I fit in. Who cares if I made things up about him? It made me feel like I was part of his life." So she was spreading lies about this kid who had just died, and even after she was called out on her bullcrap, she still needed to make it about her, and how everyone was so mean to her, and how she didn't deserve to be treated like that. That's just one of many such examples. I had a friend who made up a fake girl named Melissa on MySpace. Clearly, this was a while ago. She said Melissa was coming to our school next year and was currently being homeschooled in another town. Everyone became friends with fake MySpace Melissa, and one of our guy friends actually started falling for her. He asked for her cell, apparently she didn't have one. He asked if he could hang out with her. Apparently her parents wanted to move away from our town because she wasn't paying attention to her schoolwork. So the guy asks if he can at least meet her before she moves. This is where my friend had panicked. She was the one pretending to be Melissa, and she made up a whole story that Melissa got into a car accident. The next day she tells us Melissa is in a coma. A week later her parents take her off life support. The guy eventually put two and two together and exposed my friend in the middle of school in front of everyone. It was amazing. Desiree Jennings supposedly received a swine flu vaccination and was not able to walk as she was once able to. It was a whole news event. In 2009, she was interviewed about her new disability and most people believed her story. Heck, even I did at the time. However, as it turns out, she had been seen in public and was miraculously cured, and sometimes she even had a foreign accent. Strangely, Bill O'Reilly was one of the first people to call bullcrap when the original interview was aired. This may not have been Desiree seeking attention, but a group who is anti-vaccination spreading untruths about the issue as a scare tactic or attention grab. I had a friend claim to me she had a fiancé that was in the US Marine Corps and extremely rich. She used to talk about how he was planning on opening a billiards or hookah lounge. But to our mutual friend, she claimed they were both vampires and he was hiding from a vampire hunter. This was after the Twilight movies and books came out and she claimed she knew the author and the books were about them. She finally built up the courage to tell me her little secret herself as I kept from laughing. The mutual friend and I tried placing bets that he would never show up, nor would his business ever exist, but there was no other person to go against our call of bullcrap. Needless to say, I think the vampire hunter got him because he never showed up and the business does not exist. I don't really talk to her anymore. I don't befriend people with no pulse. Plus, I hate Twilight. Okay, so far in this video, if I had a nickel for every time a legal adult claimed to be a vampire for attention, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice. At a crowded party, saw someone poop in an empty pizza box. She was a total attention seeker. I was talking to a girl at a bar who I honestly was not remotely interested in, and this D-bag who I didn't even know walked up and said, "Hey, what's up? Oh, dude, am I jock blocking you?" You remember that girl with the Flickr account who had hundreds of pictures with her face badly photoshopped in? That was pretty bad, and so very sad. A girl in my high school used to fake all kinds of injuries. At one point, she said she hurt her back and couldn't carry her books to class. So, what did she do? She pushed them around on a damn computer chair. She was in a wheelchair for graduation, not because she actually needed it. Even her parents complained about it. She was the most ridiculous attention seeker I've ever seen. Followed closely by a girl who faked 3 pregnancies. About the time she should have gotten ultrasound pics, she always lost the baby. Sure, I've known people that have actually lost kids that way. It's terrible. Screw anyone that fakes that and wants my sympathy. Protest funerals. Granted, a certain amount of that was lawsuit baiting, but I'm sure some of it has to do with a psychotic need for attention. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My aunt and her boyfriend are just made for each other. My aunt is determined to show that anything me or my mum can do, she can do better. I passed my driving test, she bought a car she couldn't drive, crashed it on purpose into her own fence because my car was nicer. This was an excuse to make my grandmother buy her a new one. She also got both of our eyebrows pierced and looked like an owl, because I once said when I was 15 I wanted one eyebrow pierced. I was a big Evanescence fan at the time. She got her lip pierced, which ended up going horribly wrong and got infected because I'd once said I wanted it done. She started trying for another child because my mother had my baby brother. She was unsuccessful because her boyfriend was infertile. He didn't tell her this. And now for her boyfriend, which is equally hilarious. When my aunt first met him, he sent her tracks from his band. They were terrible, but my aunt loved them. She let me listen to one of them that he'd sent her a few days before, claiming it was a new song they'd just written. Turns out it was CKY, Skeletor vs. Beastman. He vehemently denied it. Then, when he finally decided to move in with my aunt, he revealed about himself that he was possessed by the Archangel Gabriel. Whenever someone said Gabriel 3 times, he'd seem as if he was having an epileptic fit, which was grossly inappropriate seeing as my uncle died in '96 of one. And then he'd speak in some sort of pathetic possessed voice for half an hour. He did this frequently whenever we tried to prove it, until my older brother got wind of it. My brother didn't stop, and after doing it 3 times in about an hour, the boyfriend stopped doing it. He's never done it since. He's an oddball who doesn't shower. We spend as little time with him as humanely possible. On another note, an ex-boyfriend of mine created an entirely new identity via email to message me on how I would never be good enough for him. He was apparently a girl called Hannah. She said that she was going to get him away from me because she was better. Repeatedly getting fake pregnant and then saying she had lost the baby. Or people faking cancer. I've known 1 or 2 of those. Airing dirty laundry on Facebook. It's so common and half the fools don't even realize how pathetic they are. No one fudging cares about your bullshit problems. That one Jewish university student who painted Third Reich symbols on her own dorm room door. It would have been awesome if they charged her with anti-Semitic hate crimes. They should have. If she's not the only Jewish student there, she's effectively terrorizing all of the others. Who did this to her? Am I next kind of thing? The whole school should get together and kick her butt. My brother had moved back home while his marriage was on hiatus. He was home for about a month when he died in a car accident. About a week before he passed, he had randomly hooked up with this incredibly horrible woman at a bar. She was under the impression that they were soulmates and were going to build this incredible free-spirited life together, even though my entire family told her that she needed to get lost and that he was just doing the deed with her to deal with the pain of his marital problems. This woman finds out about his death from a mutual friend and starts calling the family at all hours of the night, telling us how much she loved him and how she didn't know how she was going to live. She even called his wife and gave her every little detail about their one-night affair and told her that he never loved her. Finally, I decided enough is enough, and I told her that if she ever contacts my family again, she's going to have about 15 angry, grieving women jump up and down on her. A few days go by and it's time to have the funeral. We held a memorial service above our family restaurant. I go downstairs to get a drink, and there she is, sitting at the bar, and just walks up to me and asks if it's okay for her to come to the service. I very bluntly tell her no and give her a little insight into what will happen if she so much as pokes her head into the room. Not more than an hour goes by and I see this woman upstairs talking to my brother's widow. She sees me approaching her and instantly goes into hysteria, screaming and yelling, sobbing and pointing her finger in people's faces, ranting about how she was my brother's one true love. My mum walked right up behind her, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out the door and kicked her down the stairs. Oh boy. Although it's terrible that he died, it seems like the silver lining was that he didn't have to put up with the fallout from that one-night stand. Then again, maybe she'd have laid off quicker if she had the reality of the guy telling her he didn't feel that way, and to get lost rather than the silent, perfect image of a man she was with one time before she never saw him again. It all sucks in any case. Freshman year, so this totally should have worked. There was this very cute girl who had plenty of guys flirting with her. she randomly starts talking about the piercings on her chest. The conversation hadn't been about tattoos or piercings. No one says anything. She starts kind of cradling her chesty bits and telling everyone that she's got charms on the piercings. Nobody says anything. She asks if we want to see them. Nobody says anything. Spent the next few minutes looking really sad, still cradling herself. I almost took pity on her, but if the guys didn't want to see, and I didn't actually want to see, why bother? Oh god, drunken flashback. Some girl at a club did something like this, and then when I was all, "No, I'd rather not see your chest," she acted like I must be gay or broken or something. As if the thought that she was unattractive and showing strangers yourself is not something that everyone would want never even crossed her mind. Hey, what do you mean you don't want to see my eggplant, random woman in public? Are you a lesbian or something? My mother-in-law bought a pure white beaded long gown with illusion neckline and wore it in my wedding. I wasn't even wearing white myself. My cat, knocking all of my stuff onto the floor just so I'll give her a midnight snack. She always pushes the items slowly across the table so you can hear this long, annoying scraping noise before they crash to the floor. Then she looks at me for a moment to evaluate effectiveness. When she senses I'm drifting back to sleep, she knocks something else off. My teacher was reading passages from books, and one of them was about a girl who was adopted, and this one girl, Rebecca, ran out of the room crying. Later that day, she made the teacher apologize for talking about adopted kids because she was adopted. Get that attention, girl. There's so many stories from my high school. One of my teachers was a very well-respected historian, and he was teaching a class about civil rights, and he said, "I'm going to say the N-word, but not out of disrespect. You just need to understand the exact examples I'm giving, okay?" And then when he said that the signs would say, "Keep N-words out of our schools," a group of 2 to 3 girls stood up and ran out screaming, "Oh, hell nah, he didn't, that racist white boy." They tried getting him in trouble with the administration, but they were like, no, he's teaching you about civil rights. They probably weren't listening to the teacher at all until they heard that word. This is my biggest pet peeve. So, where do I begin? A guy I was friendly with in high school boasted constantly about being a published author. Having read his work myself, because he would constantly shove it under the nose of anyone he was around, which is a red flag of a terrible artist, I knew that no publishing house in their right mind would ever put their money behind that crap. Turns out he just paid a huge sum of money to some guy on the internet to print out 300 of his books, which sat in boxes in his room. Also, he had the worst BO of anyone I've ever encountered ever. In college, I came across another repeat attention hussy offender, in the form of a really hot girl that ran with our group. Being really hot her whole life, she simply assumed that the attention was to be focused on her at all times. She drank heavily, shocking I know, and whenever she was drunk, which was always, she'd literally scream over other people who were talking. She'd pull girls out of guys' laps so she could sit there, take out her chest when no one was looking at her, and cry for hours over supposed injuries like scraping her knee on the carpet. She left school and I couldn't be happier. Bethany Storrow, who faked an acid attack on herself, except that she actually used chemicals to burn her own face. She told the police that a black woman wearing a ponytail came up to her with a cup of something and said, "Hey pretty woman, want a drink of this?" and splashed the acid in her face. Bethany got a lot of sympathy and donations, but she eventually confessed to having splashed her own face with acid for attention. She has ruined her face with chemicals, all for some recognition. How humiliating. Seeing her videos pre-confession, whining about getting attacked and thanking Jesus for the strength she's found in herself, makes my skin crawl. I know a guy who pretended he had a cancerous tumor in his chest. He shaved his head and eyebrows and had a real, "I'm so sad, everyone pity me" demeanor. That was until my friend told his parents that she was so sorry to hear about him being sick, and they didn't know what she was talking about. Roll on his miraculous recovery. I was told a girl that I work with made up a boyfriend in high school. He'd send her cute texts and everything. When her friends would ask her to bring him up to hang out and meet, he was always unavailable. Then one day, he self-deleted for no reason. It's unreal what people will do. Celebrity Big Brother. I like this one. Short, succinct, and yes, washed-up celebrities doing just anything for a sweet, sweet taste of that old limelight. Well done, commenter. My sister lied about getting rid of a pregnancy. She called me out of the blue one night, crying and frantic, and explained that she'd gotten an operation to remove her 5th kid. She was only in her early 20s, had never held down a job, and couldn't care for the other 4. So I figured I'd just try and be supportive, nothing to be done about it after the fact, right? Turns out she was lying. She was just curious about how I'd react, so she kept me on the phone, acting like she wanted to end things, for most of an evening. I guess she didn't have anyone else to talk to. My brother did the same accent thing from the first story, except he'd only gone to school an hour and a half away from home and somehow picked up an English accent. It was sad, but hardly registers in the top 10 for my family. In short, my sister called me saying she wanted to not be alive about a termination she never had. Most of the people I've met who are ex-military and were special forces, like SEALs or Rangers, I swear it seems like 98% of people who served claimed to have been in the top 5% of eliteness. Back when I was wasting my time on World of Warcraft, I had a guild member email me unsolicited eggplant pics in an attempt to win my heart. I knew a guy who pretended to write this crappy pop-punk song and recorded it himself. After some Googling, turns out the song was by a crappy pop-punk band. When confronted, he claimed he helped give the band the ideas for the song. Yeah, okay. Former or current agents, what's something that you can tell us without eliminating us? Yeah, because everyone knows the internet is full of government agents with high security clearance just waiting to endow us with their secrets. My dad worked for GCHQ in the 80s doing voice recognition, and he can't say anything more for a decade more. The way they recognize you by Siri and Google today was being used in the 80s, it was just a bit slower. The CIA have different specialists, like any government branch. Field agents, paper pushers, targeting officers, programs and plan officers, paramilitary officers, language officers, information resource officers, and the list just goes on. I'm available if you're looking for a middle-aged bullcrap artist. Not FBI or CIA officer here, but my sister is a district attorney, and over the years she's prosecuted a number of animal cruelty cases. This led to her having an ongoing partnership with the FBI for the last several years. It turns out the FBI started tracking such animal cases about 10 to 15 years ago due to the incredibly high correlation between attacking animals when you're young and becoming a serial violent offender as an adult. I work with the Australian Federal Police with the Spider Squad doing computer stuff for them in regards to predators and finding trafficking victims. It's the most heartbreaking work, but when you get them, the office looks like NASA after a Mars landing. I was an analyst, not an agent. 85% of all classified material is classified because of how it was collected, not because it's juicy or useful. Yes, your boss and co-workers said that crap about you. My great-uncle was an FBI agent. Every time we'd ask him if he had any interesting stories, he'd say he was sworn to secrecy. After 10 years of hearing this, my sister asked, "Really?" And he responded with, "No, I just don't remember anything interesting happening." I met an old, retired CIA spook at a wedding reception. Spitting image of Colonel Sanders. He was amazing. So I asked him, "I don't want you to tell me anything you can't, but I'd love to know, when Kennedy got killed, what was the talk around the water cooler in the office?" He didn't halt or pause to think, he just said, "Hell, we all thought Johnson did it." Haha, he certainly came off as really wanting the job, hating Kennedy after his passing, and having a real drive and ambition. As far as I understand it, it's still a non-zero likelihood in the opinions of people who study the event. My high school girlfriend worked for the National Reconnaissance Office after college. At the time, they were responsible for analyzing the nation's spy satellite photos. She told me two things. First, there's a special garbage chute for classified materials. It's in the hallway. When you're new, as a hazing ritual, they tell you you have to shout your badge number down the chute before throwing in any materials. That's hilarious. And two, she wouldn't tell me anything about the resolution quality of the spy photos, of course, but she did let it slip that because Russian sailors will sunbathe undressed on the decks of their submarines in the Black Sea, several women in the office would pin those photos up in their cubicles as cheesecake or, I guess, beefcake photos. So a few decades ago, US spy photos could resolve Russian male anatomy. Well, I can tell you we're all told not to write stuff on sites like this, and social media in general is pretty much a no-go. Brian Bendis, the creator of Miles Morales and author of House of M and a few other works, has a story about doing a talk at GBCI at Langley and being told to wait in a break room, not allowed to have his laptop, phone, his own notebook or pen, but he was supplied with a notebook when he walked in that'd be reviewed when he left. A young analyst walks in for coffee, sees him sitting there, recognized him as famous comic book author Brian Michael Bendis, and starts to react like a fan. He then pauses, starts sweating, and quietly asks Bendis if this is a test of some kind. If you go through the FBI interview process, it takes a while. Chances are you're going to have to spend some time working on crimes against minors, which is really tough and most people don't want to do it. Yeah, I heard a story on Reddit about how somebody was involved in a case against a predator, and he had to go through every image on his hard drive to bring up any potentially incriminating photos. The case drove him out of the industry. I can't even imagine. There's a book called Moscow Rules. It was written by two CIA people, all about, well, disguise. The CIA had all of these agents in Russia, but the Russians were insane about following literally every single American in Russia 24/7 looking for spies. So a huge part of their job was trying to shake off the KGB. They had crazy quick change disguises, all sorts of stuff. The movie Argo was based on one of the writers, somewhat. We have full access to Google's ad network. If we really want to track someone, we use that. I'm not a federal agent, but like, come on, there's literally an API in the source code for it, and you think it's not being used? An ex-company man once told me that Get Smart was far more accurate than James Bond. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure being a famous spy is a sign things aren't going well. I watched the Daniel Craig films recently, and that's what stood out to me. Just how many people, especially the bad guys, knew Bond by name and appearance. Doesn't speak well for the 00 program. I worked with a woman who was former NSA. We'd always beg her to tell us stuff, but she never did. The one thing she did say, though, was that during training, they'll show them a video of a bunch of things they found out about and stopped. She said she hardly slept for 2 weeks after watching that. I have a relative that retired from the NSA a few years ago. She's talked about a few things in generalities and nothing specific. Among them are, you'll see things that entirely change your view of the world. People go in there all the time with lofty goals of changing things, and within months, those goals are mostly gone. Still, if you want to change things, you work for the agency. If you want to just make money, you work for a contractor. Nobody cares what contractors have to say. Most people will stay long enough and will do a tour in counterterrorism. Many people transfer out after a few months, and the average stay is 2 years because of the visuals. Those who stick around for a long time often change for the worst, and many struggle with mental illnesses, become alcoholics, get divorced, and generally lead miserable lives with their work being the only reason for continuing. Alcoholism in general is rife in the agency. When you cannot speak to anyone outside the agency about your work, it becomes nearly impossible to confide in anyone close to you. Even if you have close work friends or family, you have to be careful what you say because not everyone is read into every program. 2 people can sit next to each other in the same office, working on the same subject for months, and never talk about it with each other even though they're close friends outside the agency. So people turn to the bottle. Her husband worked for a different government agency and also had a top-secret SCI clearance, but she couldn't talk about work with him, nor could he with her, but his didn't involve the intelligence community. The agency employs psychiatrists who are cleared to be read into almost any program. Going to them, though, is often seen as a mark of shame among other agency employees, so they're not used nearly as often as they should be. She told me most of these things while trying to recruit me. She believed that I should go in knowing what to expect. I eventually declined to apply. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but a mentor who definitely wasn't supposed to tell me used to be a white hat for the FBI. Apparently all he did was search for predators by tracking adult movie websites. He said he didn't stay for very long because it was messing with his mentality. If you guys were wondering, he left to go join the Navy, became a nuke EM, but they pulled him out of the program because of his cybersecurity skills, and before I left our command, he was helping our CMC connect his computer to a projector. Sorry to put you on the spotlight, EM1. Operation Ivy Bells was a plan to top Soviet communication lines. The cover story they used was that they had divers diving down to recover fragments of a new Soviet supersonic anti-missile ship. The communication line tap was a failure due to a spy. However, the dive teams successfully recovered all the fragments of the missiles from the Soviet weapons tests. The US was able to reverse engineer one, and subsequently learned that they were radar-guided only, and the assumed infrared guidance did not exist. Yeah, you'd like to know what accounts belong to the FBI and CIA agents, wouldn't you? Yeah, well, it is a little hard for us to verify some of these accounts, admittedly. That is one of the downsides of user-submitted stories. Also, I wonder if doing this is putting me on some sort of list just for saying the words FBI over and over. If I can trust that she's telling the truth, there's an old lady in town who was in the FBI back in the 50s and 60s. She said Nikita Khrushchev was a short man. 2 family stories from me. My father's uncle told everyone for his entire life that he worked at a button factory. It was only revealed after his death that he in fact worked at a missile factory and assembled the gyroscopes for the guidance in missiles. And then we always knew that my grandfather worked for the government at the Pentagon. We never knew what exactly he did, but every 6 months or so he'd call up to talk to my mum. The conversation was pretty much the same every time. My mum and grandfather would catch up for a few, and then it would turn into, "So, I have another clearance upgrade coming up. You'll probably get a call like always. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Surer than anything, a week later, some government agency would call up. It was always a different one, and they'd ask for my mum. They'd ask a bunch of questions, and that would be that. When he died from Alzheimer's, at his funeral, 4 men in black suits attended, and nobody knew who they were. After the burial, they approached his window and handed her a plaque with 17 government agency symbols on it. Turns out he was responsible for interagency cooperation and training. He basically got everyone to talk to and teach each other. Now his son works for them, doing what? We don't know and we don't ask. I have worked with and know guys in intelligence. Most of the intelligence we get is from OSINT, open source intel. They do news articles, press releases, news networks, and government announcements scouring. Most people think that everyone in intelligence is some sort of James Bond or Jason Bourne type of individual, when in reality, the majority of analysts sit at a desk and go through news articles all day. That said, that's not the only method we have to gather intel, but this is where most of it comes from. Even analysts that are using other methods such as GeoInt, IMINT, and SIGINT spend their days cropping images for minute details or replaying and monitoring the same signal over and over. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I once rented out my old farmhouse to a family. They paid the rent every month, and other than not mowing the lawn to save their life, I didn't think anything bad about them. That all changed when the DEA called me to inform me that my renter had been murdered in Mexico and was asking my permission to search the property. Well, it turns out I'd unknowingly rented my house to the Mexican mob and they were using it as a safe house. It all fell apart for them when 2 of them got caught with a duffel bag full of crystal. My renter had to go back to Mexico to visit his mother and was promptly unalived. Let's just say I no longer am a landlord and never will be again. I'm not with any service, but my friend is. She went off the grid after she graduated college and got recruited by the CIA. She told us she was interested and majored in political science. I hope she's doing well. Want to work for them? Prepare to do a fair amount of paperwork. The form will ask for each of your former employers' contact information of friends, your history of addresses, and they'll then send an agent to interview a number of these people. Next, you have to take a psychological exam and be interviewed by a psychologist. Finally, you'll have one last interview with a polygraph and a professional lie detector. Intelligence work is really boring most of the time. I talked with some CIA recruiters towards the end of college and almost applied earnestly after a large group Q&A and then a much smaller one. The thing that stuck out to me was that the guys said most CIA agents are out of shape and have limited combat training with weapons or hand-to-hand. They made it clear that it's the military that uses force. If confronted, they were trained to immediately surrender or to drop their bags and run if possible. My sister's an intelligence officer who was assigned to a Special Forces FOB in Afghanistan for a period. She had to go through a gun qualification course and failed. This meant she wasn't allowed to carry a firearm while deployed. The instructor told her she was one of a very select group so bad at shooting that they could not pass, and then jokingly gave her a knife to carry. She spent deployment doing whatever she does, some sort of analysis, and then hanging around the gym so she could watch the buff Special Forces guys lift. 95% of individuals can be uniquely identified using as few as 4 spatiotemporal points. If you apply for a job at GCHQ or MI5, MI6, Filingdales, or the others, they'll talk to every member of your close family, and if any minor red flags come up, you might not get the job. And also, if you're Chinese, Russian, or North Korean, I think it probably goes to a grandparent or great-grandparent being from that country, you won't even be able to apply. My source? My stepdad was an MI6, and fun fact, if he wants to go to certain countries, like Israel, he has to ask permission from the MOD to travel there. Just so you know, people, there will be a case file opened in order to investigate and document this internet video. Am I on the list? It's a harmless question. Well, you can FOIA your FBI dossier to find out, though that definitely puts you on another list. I've done this. It was really disappointing. A single piece of paper with my name, addresses lived, places of employment, and known group memberships. Whoever put it together had a sense of humor, though. After noting my association with Discordianism, there was an F-Nord snuck in there. My conclusion is that the people who work for government agencies are the same kind of nerds I'm friends with. Psst, don't tell anyone, but we spy on people sometimes. I mean, you literally want Snowden dead over this very publicly. When I applied for a clerical position with the FBI, someone on the subway unaccountably sat next to me and asked if I'd write her son and persuade him to apply to a school for the deaf. I'm deaf myself. How could she have known I was? The minute I sat down, I happened to catch her eye, and she's like, "There he is," and comes sits next to me. Come to think of it, I don't recall being photographed during my interview. It's just so weird. So I wrote a letter, she and I met for dinner, and then we went our separate ways. I've always wondered about this. So, does the FBI do this in order to check you out? I didn't get the job due to an old college debt, by the way. This is eerie. And given where you'd just been, it does seem like the most likely outcome, doesn't it? But then again, stranger things happen out of nowhere all the time in the stories we read here on the channel. I don't know. I've had a clearance, so I can weigh in a little. Two things. First, most secret crap happens right in front of people's faces under the guise of being normal, everyday stuff. Secondly, properly secret programs and operations are never named in any way that indicates what they actually are about. They generally just chuck two words together at random that would rarely come up in any normal conversation, stuff like cracked gorilla, which I just made up off the top of my head. So when people talk about classified stuff and its name is super topical, it's either very, very old or a nickname at best. Only public programs and operations have topical names as a PR motive, like Desert Storm. Maybe off topic, I had dinner with a bunch of pasty white overweight dudes interested in hiring us for some AI consulting. We knew they worked for the Defense Department, maybe Defense Intelligence Agency, but they couldn't tell us exactly who they worked for or what exactly they needed. At least not until we had clearance. At some point in the conversation, I asked the one buff-looking guy if he ever served in the military. He said he was a Navy SEAL. I looked at the other dorky-looking dudes and asked them one at a time. They were all former Special Forces guys. I mean, you'd never ever think of any of these guys being Special Forces. They all looked like regular IT guys. I don't know for sure, but my guess is that they were all CIA. I was in the sauna at my gym when this undressed old man with extremely long droopy bits started talking to me. Somehow the conversation ended up on the topic of my new roommate, who happened to be Saudi Arabian. He then proceeded to tell me he worked for the FBI and knew exactly who I was, and asked if I would like to make some money every now and again for giving him information. I said sure, not because my roommate was sketchy, but because he got drunk one day and peed on my couch. This was 10 or so years ago, and I never really heard from him, but I think my phone was tapped for a short span of time. Most of the job is agents talking about looking forward to retirement, time-waster trainings, whining about the crappy new guys or how the job has changed, shady hiring practices, new policies designed to maximize agent liability while letting the old skirt chasers retire with BS Lifetime Achievement Awards, and wondering how the Sam hell the current agency admins got to be in charge. By the time you finally get that amazing career case, the passion, skill, and dedication you had when you started out is long gone because the agency doesn't really care about you or any of the other cogs. The US Attorney's Office isn't interested in anything they can't win without absolute certainty. Two other people have written in and agreed with me, and I apparently agreed with me as well. This is more support than you will ever get from your admins as a federal agent. I have a few friends that are CIA officers. First thing is that the people that work for the CIA are not CIA agents, they are officers. The people they recruit to spy for them are agents. Also, going on a tangent, I'm 90% sure that I've been one of those agents when I was dealing with a Mexican logistics company while working at General Motors. The logistics company we were dealing with was owned by a multi-million-dollar Mexican clan, and all of the ultra-wealthy clans in Mexico all have ties to various cartels. So some federal agencies got involved, mainly FBI and I believe DEA, but one guy was specifically not wearing any badges and was not willing to identify what agency he was working for, and questioned me on a lot of specific details of what the company's capabilities were. Though getting back on track, anyone who's a US citizen can apply to join the CIA. It isn't that hard. If you have any kind of degree in computer science, statistics, engineering, or accounting, and don't have anything that would screw up you getting a clearance, getting a job would be relatively easy there. And, as implied with that previous comment, working at the CIA is far more boring than you would think. Lots of tracing manufacturing capabilities, from what I described with that Mexican logistics company, to finding out how China sources the components they use to manufacture their satellites. This is only kind of related, but my dad worked in SATCOM for the Army for like 35 years. Kid me thought satellite communications would be some kind of really cool, high-tech, important job, trying to find where the bad guys were or whatever. My dad, being a dad, when I asked him what he did at work, he said, "I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, son." This was reinforced when he came home one day with a satellite image of our house. This was pre-Google Maps or Google Earth crap, so it was mind-blowing to me. When he actually told me what he did when I got older, it was mostly IT stuff and occasionally training new people. I imagine the majority of all the jobs at the FBI or CIA are similar mundane things. My father was in the Navy and ended his career working at the Pentagon. When the war started in Iraq, he'd flip out every time the news pushed the weapons of mass destruction narrative. Lo and behold, there were none. I had a customer years ago that worked for the FBI in a support role. Tech stuff. He wasn't an agent or anything. He signed up to coach Pee-wee soccer for his 5-year-old and met his assistant coach at the first game. Monday morning, he got called into his supervisor's office to meet with some agents. Apparently, his assistant coach was a well-known mafia boss and they wanted to know everything he talked about. He was shocked because A, he had no idea, and B, that they did. Not an FBI agent myself, but I was recently in frequent contact with an FBI recruiter about open positions I was considering, and what they told me was that the process of actually becoming an FBI employee usually takes between 1 to 2 years for all the necessary background checks and training and exams. That the FBI does all the stuff you see in the movies, just not as quickly. As I was watching some X-Files the night before the recruiter told me that, you can imagine that spooked me quite a bit. Special agents aren't spies, they're cops, which is ultimately why I didn't decide to go forward with the application, since the initial info session made it seem like special agents had more of a foreign or diplomatic role than they do, which is what drew me in the first place. "This was a test. You've all failed your security checkup. Turn in your badges and your guns." "Oh, but Chief, I've only got 3 days till retirement." What was a dark secret of your former, well-known employer? I used to work for a company that rhymes with Muzzbead, and we used to have somebody post a variation on this very question every few months for material for one of our clickbait articles. Well, they're out of business now, but in the early 90s I worked at Radio Shack for a year and a half. When people would return an item because it didn't work, the manager of the store would just box it back up and sell it again as if it were new. When I asked him about that, he said, hopefully they'll return it to a different store. I nearly got fired when I refused to sell a guy a walkie-talkie CB radio that I knew didn't work. The guy was on his way out for a hunting trip and was buying 3 of these for him and his friends. We had 2, and I knew the third one was the broken one. In front of the customer, I told the manager that one didn't work and I'd tested it. The guy was happy I told him. We arranged for him to get the last one he needed at a different store, and off he went. The manager was livid with me and nearly fired me. I'm sorry, I'm not sending people out into the forest with gear that I know doesn't work. Hilariously, a few months later, the manager was caught stealing from the store and got fired. One time I returned a monitor to a Fry's Electronics that had a defective mount, so that it was lopsided no matter what. I literally watched the guy box it back up to normal looking, tape it up, and while he was refunding my card, I saw another one walk over and put it back on the shelf. No wonder they're out of business now. I used to work at a graphic designer firm. All of our Adobe software was pirated. From what I've heard about Adobe, if I was in that game, I'd be pirating too. Olive Garden breadsticks are just Fran's brand breadsticks, garlic, salt, and margarine. If you don't hear music when you're supposedly on hold, the operator simply muted their mic and can still hear you. I've heard interesting and damning things while customers thought I couldn't hear them. I used to work surveillance at a casino. From something like a 3 stories high ceiling, we could zoom in on the table games and read the serial numbers of the bills. We could see the pips on the dice. Policy was to not look down blouses. This is true and also really annoying because I worked on the floor and the guys in surveillance can't be bothered to do their job and give us a lot of, we really can't see anything when we call them about stuff. Well, they're busy looking down blouses. I don't know if this is true, but it's certainly plausible. Both that the technology exists but that the analysts are too lazy to use it, and that people use it exclusively to be creeps. Government-funded refugee advocacy agencies at a time were approving a disproportionate amount of young women, between 18 to 25, from Syria and Iraq, with a history of the unspeakable act for their services. Upon further investigation, I and my team discovered consultants from said agency were engaging in relationships with these girls and were denying them opportunities of employment to keep them in financial destitution purposefully. When the girls became desperate, the offer of private services for compensation was made by the consultants. I whistle blew to the organization heads. They thanked me, and the consultants were gone the next day. Huge meeting with senior board, apologies and statements of, this isn't the way we do things. Many speeches, blah blah blah. And within 3 months, me and the other 6 complainants and investigators had all resigned from the company for different reasons. On paper, it looks coincidental. In reality, we were all individually pushed out. 2 of the consultants that we uncovered doing the worst stuff weren't even fired. They were given the option to resign and are currently working at other agencies with vulnerable young women. Yeah, you should at least give an anonymous tip to the FBI, because that's borderline human trafficking. Maple sap can be trucked in from other states, and where it's turned from sap to syrup decides on the state it comes from, not the location of the trees. Inbound call center. The "we are currently experiencing an unusually high call volume" message is permanent. They just didn't staff adequately. That, and sometimes we just took our sweet time. I worked as a dog groomer for a summer. We gave your dog a treat even if they weren't good. Worked in insurance. Hundreds of people have access to your social security number with no security clearance or background check. Worked at a major cable and ISP company, and there are 4 billing cycles. They upgraded the billing system but did something wrong, and all but the current cycle got a late charge. But instead of fixing it immediately, we were told to credit their account if the customer called in. I did the math, and for the size of our city and the 3/4 of people wrongly charged, it was over $1 million US. Most people just pay their bill and don't look too close. Comcast. They do this all the time. Not really worth the hour plus it takes on the phone for them to not steal from you, but it's worth it to them to steal from thousands of people. They make so much money. If you were on live chat with customer care, I could see what you were typing before pressing send. I watched people work through grotesque, racist, misogynistic statements, fraudulent lies and mistruths, meticulous grammar fixes, and their whole range of emotions in real time before deleting and typing, "Okay." Arby's manager replaced the expiration stickers on the bread with new ones. I guess so the bread would last longer that way. I threw out more than 100 pitas with green fuzz on them after checking the manager's work. Yep, Subway manager used to do similar. Prepped all of the veggies and meats, like way over-prepped, and everything went out of date. Most things last 2 days. Lettuce, after a couple of days, becomes a slimy sludge. They basically wanted me to replace all of the date marking stickers and call it a day. Not only was it horrifically bad, it was time-intensive. But I wasn't having it. I discarded all of it, bins and bins of waste, and I told the area manager. Nobody did anything, just said be quiet. Then the manager disappeared off the face of the earth, thankfully for our sakes. I worked for a restoration company. One time an elderly woman called them to clean her house. She was a hoarder, or there had been a fire, I can't remember. Anyway, the company charged $57,000 for the work to be done, but in actuality they couldn't even get the charges to add up to $20,000. She couldn't file this on her insurance. There are other examples of gross overcharging, but this is the worst I know of that wasn't on the large loss side. The lesson here is, if you have water, fire, mold, or hoarder damage and call in a company to clean it up, go through every line item on the invoice. Every single one. I worked for a large construction company, and the sales guys would intentionally omit items from contracts because they received incentives for what would then become a change order. I'd say, "You forgot to include any framing in this contract," and the sales weasel would be like, "Oh, I guess it's a change order then." Customer cries. The difference between the high-quality deli meat sold at Marks & Spencer's and the regular deli meat sold in other grocery stores is that we changed the label. We'd literally stop the production line, wait for the guy who ran the label machine to swap them out, and then start it back up again. This isn't an uncommon occurrence across any product. The concept of perceived quality fascinates me. I work in wine manufacturing, and it's incredible what people will spend on wine because the packaging makes it appear high or low quality. Marketing also plays a big role, of course. Store or generic brands don't advertise, or advertise much less, so the costs can stay low. Cheaper packaging, cheaper advertising, same product, lower price. Your luggage at an airport isn't really handled with care. Nothing is handled with care. If it's marked fragile, your only hope is nice baggage handlers. You should avoid packing breakable things at all costs. Okay, it's not totally true, I've never had one, but we were trained on how to properly handle a casket. The training was, be very careful, don't drop it, and for the love of God, don't sit on it like it's a horse. True story, that's what our boss said. And of course, there's that wonderfully human fact of life. The fact that someone included this absolute no-brainer in your training means that one or multiple people have indeed ridden the coffin like that one guy riding the bomb in Dr. Strangelove. Awesome. Hotels do not typically have security, maintenance, or housekeeping on staff 24/7. Once housekeeping finishes cleaning all of the rooms, the entire staff leaves except for one front desk employee. Yeah, the amount of times I, at the time a 19-year-old kid, was left completely alone at a mid-size and largely recognizable hotel brand was honestly kind of wild. I essentially had no clue what I was doing. People would just kind of call that something in their room was broken, and literally the best I could do was go up and just kind of troubleshoot random stuff. And then during that time, the front desk was completely unattended. This was like 9 p.m. too, not 3 a.m. The secret ingredient of Jimmy John's tuna salad is soy sauce. Kiko-Man soy sauce, specifically. And yes, screw the owner for what he does to animals. I worked at Best Buy 20 years ago. Employee discount was 5% over cost, and I needed a new printer. Decided to splurge on a gold-plated USB printer cable that we sold for $40. I rang up $1.78. The stain protector is only useful if you actually file a claim. It isn't a magic frickin' potion. Most furniture companies sell some sort of stain protector as an add-on. People buy it thinking it has some magic ability to prevent stains over the life of a piece of upholstery. Then, 5 years later, they'll spill some Kool-Aid on that stuff and the stain doesn't come out. With most of those protectors, there's a warranty claim process that will get you a new sofa, or a new set if your sofa pattern isn't made anymore, but nobody ever files a claim. That's the gimmick. The company is counting on you not actually holding them to the deal that they made you, and virtually nobody does. The vehicle modification stop at Chillicothe Correctional Institution in Chillicothe, Ohio, dumps waste coolant from the machine stop into a storm drain that empties directly into the Scioto River, because the chemical disposal tank is a 55-gallon drum in the paint shop, and that's much too small. They can't throw me into solitary confinement for complaining anymore. This happens about once a year when the machine's coolant reservoirs are emptied and the coolant is replaced. It's not on a schedule, and it's one of those things that you do when work is slow. Each machine holds 15 to 20 gallons, and usually you just add more as it evaporates. But eventually it gets nasty and needs to be replaced. It's supposed to go in a waste tote to be disposed of safely, which is what every non-government machine shop does. Being able to prove that this is being done would require knowing that they're going to do this, and that's a decision that often gets made spur of the moment. Hey, work is slow, let's have a cleanup day. There aren't phones in the machine shop either. A container to store the waste properly costs $200. Why waste taxpayer money when we can just poison the taxpayers instead? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One of our best restaurants in my town is locally famous and everybody goes there. They say everything is homemade. The thing they're famous for is the hot beef sandwiches, with homemade potatoes and gravy, and the fish fry. The fish fry they also have during the week listed as an entree called the cod platter. The homemade potatoes and gravy are instant Cisco brown gravy mix and instant Cisco mashed potatoes. The cod is only fresh and fried on Fridays. If you order it during the week, it's frozen breaded Cisco fish fillets, aka a blend of random fish shaped into a stick. In the United States, one company's bread and butter was simply reboxing and relabeling computer monitors from China to make it seem like they were from the company, and they made and assembled them in some way. I worked for a major hotel chain in housekeeping for 10 years. The number of self-deletions and people who die naturally in their hotel rooms is a lot higher than you'd think. I worked at a huge convention hotel with over 1,000 rooms, and it happened pretty often. Unless it was a really gnarly mess, it would just get cleaned up like normal, and the next guest had no idea. Ice manufacturing. My shift manager dropped a 7-gram bag of Mary J into a bag of ice. It went out for delivery. Nobody ever phoned in to complain, though. Right around the same time a major retailer had its largest warehouse burned down, it fired a huge number of its store managers under the guise that their stores were experiencing unusually high theft rates of more than $2 million after its annual shrinkage report. They fired my store manager and tried to tell me that we had a near $3 million shrinkage. I spent 12 hours with a full crew of salaried managers trying to locate the missing items within the store. I'm talking full-blown arcade machines, furniture, big-ticket items. We found nothing outside of a display the counting crew missed. The warehouse was burned down within a week or two of this. They're still filling in some of these store management spots. When I worked at a Godiva store, we'd turn expired chocolate bars into sample pieces. Somehow, this is the most benign comment in this whole group. Chuck E. Cheese isn't a real mouse. If you lived in Brandon, Florida from 2007 through 2009, it was actually me. Everyone's favorite sauce that people wanted the recipe for was mostly mayonnaise. Sure, it was called creamy pineapple sauce, but it's just pineapple salsa and mayonnaise. At my newspaper, we sometimes made up letters to the editor. All new clothing and everything you try on is dirty. I've worked in retail for years, and it still shocks people that there's no washing machine or disinfectant spray or wipes. Nothing. I've opened boxes of new clothes that had white bugs coming out of them. I've seen women after a workout class come in and try clothes on, and then just leave still sweaty from the class. One older lady left dime-size skin flakes in the clothes that she tried on. Not to mention whatever happens when they return the item or what happened in the factory. People are gross, nothing is clean, always wash your clothes when you get them home. Well, this is my least favorite one. I'll admit I was already aware of it, although it took me until my 30s to figure out I should be washing these things once I bought them, but these specific examples were a bit too gross for me. Ugh. If you pick up a wall phone at Home Depot at the time of writing in 2022 and push 7, it activates the store-wide intercom. This works in every store in my province as far as I know. #, then 35 at Lowe's. Your warranty service part that took 8 months actually arrived 3 weeks after they paid the invoice. They didn't even order it for 7 months. They told you it was a manufacturing delay and supply chain issue, but in reality they couldn't afford to pay their bills and just had to pick and choose which orders to place. You weren't a priority. They were just really bad at budgeting and damage control. Ice machines are disgusting inside, full of slime. Inbound call center. There's no such thing as a silent hold. You are on mute. We could still hear you, but this isn't done maliciously, so we can listen in. We had targets for hold time, and putting you on mute instead of on hold on that call brought the average down. Sometimes we were asking a colleague for input, sometimes we were avoiding an awkward silence while the computer took forever to load. Personally, I did it a lot because I can fix your issue or account easier when you're not yapping in my ear with stupid questions. And also I might want to shout some very bad words at the last person you spoke to for messing it up or bullcrapping you in the first place. I worked at a candy bagging warehouse, like the crappy 99-cent gas station candy where we'd even make the trail mix by hand. Tons of sweat would drip into the mix because we'd be in a 100 Fahrenheit plus room with little ventilation. Also, my boss was a hunter, so a quarter of the warehouse was dedicated to his taxidermy treasure room. Frickin' smelt like crap in the summer, but he was so proud of himself. Also, I should add that if the expiration dates were bad, we'd use nail polish remover to take the date off. I used to work for a rural internet service provider. We had one access point with 13 customers, but only 12 IP addresses provisioned. This means only 12 out of 13 people could be online at any one time. Anytime a customer called from that service area, we'd log in and reboot the tower's radios, kicking everyone offline to force DHCP renewals. It always meant that whomever was calling in was able to get an IP and get online, but we knew that if all 13 customers wanted to be online at once, we wouldn't be able to service them. I brought it up with management, but they deemed it too expensive to address. I explained that it made us look like a fly-by-night, shady-as-heck outfit. Since it was a rural ISP, I knew I'm not just talking to one person either. I'm talking to him, his wife, dog, kids, priest, and 5 buddies from the coffee shop. Make a bad impression on one person and you might as well take out an ad in their local paper calling the whole town buttholes. I handed out a lot of free months of service working there, and would often make the point credits aren't revenue for justifiably angry customers. I used to work as a receptionist at an upscale salon. While I was there, the salon introduced a new line of products marketed towards men. Up until that point, most of our products were marketed towards women, but the execs saw that we were getting more male customers. Every item in the men's product line was about half the cost of our other products. The men's shampoo was the exact same shampoo the salon had been selling for many years, but because they put it in black packaging with the word man on it, it was half the price. The owner's explanation was, well, men don't want to pay that much for hair products. For the rest of the time I worked there, every time a woman came up to buy that shampoo, I'd tell her that the men's shampoo was the exact same product for half the price. If you go to an event that has event security, ask them for better seats, or be really nice to them. They might bring you something special. I work at a hockey rink. We give nice people pucks, pins, and let them go down to the front to see the players. I worked at L'Oreal. The cosmetics from L'Oreal and Lancome are practically the same, but Lancome costs you like $20 more. I worked at a Petco in Alaska. Apparently brown or black mice are not allowed up here. Only white mice. We got a shipment in of a bunch of black and brown mice and had to take them to the vet to be euthanized. Also, the animals are literally shipped in on a UPS truck and delivered in packages. I would open a package and it would be full of fish or mice or snakes. You never knew what was coming. It was wild. Luckily, my shift manager was a really good person. She tried her best to help any sick animal and was super diligent about keeping the cages really clean. She'd stay after hours to care for the sick animal in the back and double down on the cleaning. When upper management came, they didn't give a damn how clean anything was. They'd yell at us to get more customers to sign up for pet rewards. If I didn't pester every single person checking out, they'd get angry and give me point deductions. I have no idea what the deductions even did. One of the upper managers watched me for like 3 hours when I was at the register. He said I wasn't pushy enough on getting people to donate or sign up for stuff. Which I will ask once, and if they say no, I am not asking again. That crap is only going to drive people away. He also got mad at me when I didn't clean the birdcage fast enough. He said it took time away from the register. Oh, I'm sorry I don't want our birds to stand there in their own doo-doo for hours, so yeah, I'm going to take my time to scrub that crap clean. Also, don't buy fish from Petco. Pretty much every shipment that came in, they were all infected with ICK. Basically, half our tanks were in quarantine. We had several customers come back saying we killed their entire fish tank because of a fish we sold to them. Screw Petco. Well, I've never heard of that company, but this seems like a good public service announcement for our listeners in Freedom Land. Keep those Petco fishies out of your aquariums, and dump out your litter boxes in the cars of any of the company's upper management when you see them in the parking lot. This isn't a company secret, but I worked part-time at a Domino's franchise in college. The owner was, at first glance, a short-tempered, critical penny pincher who did everything he could to save business money, right down to watching over your shoulder to make sure you didn't put too much cheese on a pizza. Cheese is called white gold in the pizza industry, even back in 2002. But after working for him for a while, you realized why he was so specific about the margins. Twice yearly, he would send out generous bonuses, in the form of money orders made out to his employees from his own personal savings account to the college students working for him. The checks and money orders contained the memo line, "Keep learning." The amount of the money orders would be directly correlated to the profit margins of the stores he owned. The guy did legit profit sharing. After I graduated, I heard a rumor that he was trying to start up a small education grant trust that would benefit applicants of the Farmer School of Business at Miami University. But I don't think anything ever came of it. This owner also played favorites when hiring. Every single one of his managers was a former employee. 3 of the 4 managers at his stores when I worked there had graduated from my college with business degrees. All 4 of them had a small portion of their education paid for by Marvin Corvington. Marvin Corvington, Oxford, Ohio Domino's owner from Vevey, Indiana, died in 2017. That guy knew how to do business and do it right. What's life like working with billionaires? Years ago, a friend of mine's dad was trying to sell his startup company and picked up an investor at the airport. He was proud of his classic Rolls-Royce and noticed the investor looking around, playing with the air vents. So he said, "Is this your first time in a Rolls Royce?" And the guy said, "No, but it was his first time in the front seat. That's a flex." He managed time very differently than anyone I was used to. Like, our meeting with him began precisely on schedule, lasted 30 minutes, and there was no chit-chat. Before this meeting, we had a pre-meeting with his admin to discuss expectations. The admin explained that we had to be on time, no introductions or titles, just name, no small talk, no marketing, be prepared to answer technical and financial questions quickly and succinctly. For the latter, if there were numbers, we had to know precisely which page of the material had the information. When the meeting took place, we were brought in exactly to the second at the starting time. Sat down, and within 30 minutes he was asking us all manner of questions. I had to field technical questions that appeared to be asked not so much for whether my answer was right, but that I didn't hesitate. I also gained a healthy respect for my manager as he was sharp and answered quickly and accurately. I didn't realize that the act of driving is some peasant crap till I met them. I work for a major corporation. One of my colleagues started talking to a director as they were leaving once. They were both walking towards the train station, and she assumed he was also getting a train. As they got there, a limo pulled up and he nonchalantly said, "Bye," and left. My son had a friend in elementary school whose dad was one of the two founders of Capital One. The kid's mum had a secretary for playdates. Dad would fly to London to watch Tottenham. Had a permanent seat. Their London house was next to J.K. Rowling's. You couldn't tell by the way they dressed or their cars, but their vacations were the big difference. The strange thing is that their son loved a mango juice sold maybe 10 to 15 minutes from the house. I always made sure we had some for mine. I send it to him via Amazon occasionally. Hire a private chef for a casual Tuesday lunch with her girlfriends. $2K, just like that. This always seems like one of the better chef gigs to me. Sure, you're never going to be famous for your food, but the ones I know of seem well compensated for the service they provide, and it seems a lot less stressful than restauranting. Also, who doesn't want someone who can cook anything you want at a moment's notice? The real answer is that they have people who handle things. I dated a girl whose family was well off. Dad had sold a company you've heard about for about $600 million. The whole family had a professional assistant called Janice. If someone needed something arranged, text Janice. 7-course catered dinner on Christmas Eve? Text Janice. Prep the semi-private jet for a flight cross-country? Janice will set it up. Need the oil changed in the Chrysler Town and Country minivan? Seriously? Janice will have it done. Need access to the family's private ranch outside of Aspen? You'll work with the caretaker and Janice will coordinate. I got to spend some time with her and she was paid fairly well for her work. My brother is a gazillionaire. I don't know how wealthy he is, but it's a lot of zeros. He owns multiple businesses, which he created from scratch. He treats all of his employees very well. He takes good care of them and their families. They're extremely loyal and have stayed with him for many years. As others have mentioned, he is always on. He's always looking for a new angle. He does business on his cell phone while riding a ski lift, but he does a great job of being in the moment. He can be horsing around with his grandkids and then, in 2 minutes of slack time, checks his email and makes a huge business decision before going back to his grandkids with gusto. He lives in a beautiful home which, while luxurious and well-appointed, is modest by gazillionaire standards. He and his wife are gracious and generous hosts, don't show off their property, but make their guests feel welcome and comfortable. Their guests aren't just fellow gazillionaires, but cover the entire socio-economic spectrum. He doesn't flaunt his wealth. He has an expensive hobby, and he takes his family on expensive vacations, but he doesn't make a big deal of either one. Plus, he invites his brothers on ski trips and such, and all we have to do is show up and have a good time with him. The best thing is he's a silent philanthropist. He very quietly gives away buckets of money. He doesn't brag about it, he just does it. It goes to scout troops, churches, schools, international foundations, single mothers, and the list goes on. I've only found out about his giving indirectly, never from him. If anyone ever deserved their wealth, it was him. He knows how to make money, save it, spend it, and give it away. One old money-rich person treated me to a fancy meal and she was super polite and nice and tipped well. What struck me was the decisiveness and confidence that everyone there would cater to her, and they did. She wanted X dish that they didn't make that day, and they made it. The one that sticks out with me was at the end she said, "I want a cappuccino with some fancy topping I've never heard of, and I want them to put a design on it. Like, I've got cute cappuccinos in my life. It doesn't even cost extra, it just never occurred for me to just ask for everything I want all the time." This was the same person that on a business trip hugged me after the flight and said, "I did it. Oh, is this your first time in economy?" And she goes, "No, it's my first time flying commercial." Just so we all understand how rich she was. The expectation that someone else will always cater to you is spot on. I worked at a really fancy hotel within walking distance of an Ivy League university, and the super wealthy people just expect certain things. Most people around them who aren't their friends or family are considered the help, even if they don't say it out loud. They also feel pretty entitled to things, like they'll just walk up behind the bar and grab a bottle of wine that they want. Have no fear when addressing anyone. No social barriers. My friend was a pilot for a very large aluminium business in America. So think aluminum foil. The brothers would fly for business meetings, and my friend would make all the arrangements, including car rentals. These guys would drive off and go to their meetings and dinners. Sometimes they'd just leave the rental car behind and ride with others to change venues or whatever. He tried to tell them the rental doesn't stop unless the car gets returned, and they didn't really care. If it was any level of inconvenience, they just moved on. It was more than once he had to go back and find a car based on their recollection and get it returned. I was working on securing a large gift for a hospital with naming rights for a very generous donor and commented on his beautiful Patek Philippe watch. He took it off and gave it to me. I couldn't accept it, despite the watch being worth far more than my annual salary, a few years over. Later, when I changed jobs, he took me out for lunch with my former boss and presented the same watch to me. Far too generous a gift, but he liked me. I was born to working-class parents who made it to the upper middle class and put me in old New England prep schools, so I grew up around a lot of super rich people despite not being one myself. There were exceptions, but generally, the old money families were pretty humble and unassuming. One of my closest friends, for example, grew up in a legit mansion, like 15,000 square feet in the primary residence. He had several other houses in various states and countries, a yacht, just endless money, and yet he still grew up wearing hand-me-downs from his older brothers and family friends. These families had the mindset that we have endless pits of money, so we'll buy whatever we want. Alongside, it's silly to spend money for the sake of spending money because we don't need to prove ourselves to anyone. As a result, you would end up with these weird inconsistencies. Like this kid is at my house talking about how his mum just bought a second set of horse stables, so she has a place for her horses at her favorite vacation house, while my mum, who grew up in the projects, is wondering why his jacket has a tear with duct tape covering it. They spend money for pleasure, utility, and convenience, not for status or superficial reasons. In comparison, the first or second generation money families tended to be concerned with keeping up appearances and buying fashionable things. Again, there were exceptions, but this was definitely the trend. My aunt and uncle are self-made multimillionaires. If you meet them, you'd think that they're well off, but nothing spectacular. In general, they're both very frugal. However, the two areas where they completely detach from ordinary life are 1. Vet bills for their animals. The example that most stands out in my mind was their last dog. He needed dialysis and no vet where we live could provide it. So they did their research and discovered that the best treatment in the country was available in London. A flat in Kew, I think somewhere fairly central anywhere, was rented for the 6 months the dog would need treatment for, and my uncle would stay in it for 1 week a month while the dog had his treatment, then travel back home for the other 3 weeks. And then there was legal help. Neighbors being pains in the backside, they'd send in the solicitor. Trying to organize a purchase for sale and it's taking too long? Pay the solicitor to fast-track it. Local council leaving traffic lights up for over a week after work has been completed? Cry havoc and let slip the solicitors of war. That second one, though. Honestly, I think it seems kind of like a beautiful dream if you really do have terrible neighbors and you want to expedite the shutting of pie holes and quietening of music. But I think most people this litigious could absolutely abuse their fabulous wealth and make people's lives miserable. Here are my experiences. First, the CEO of a large company didn't come from huge wealth, so fairly self-made. As others said, he was a literal workaholic, 24/7, 365 days a year. Zero boundaries between work and personal, and expected the same of his direct reports, unfortunately. Endless energy, perfectionist. Also, his wife was a total witch and his adult kids hated him. The other one was a billionaire who'd inherited his wealth. Was on his ranch in the West, and this cowpoke guy went with us on a horseback ride. He also cooked breakfasts. I literally thought he was a hired hand. Ends up, he was the owner of the ranch. Was kind, friendly, could rope a steer like a true hired hand, and make some mean breakfast tacos. Of course, he flew to the ranch on his private jet while we got there dragging butt in economy class with 12-hour delays. I worked for a billionaire for a whole year. At first, it was great because he made us feel like he was in the trenches with us. I came to find out that he made fun of us 8 employees for the salary he was paying us and tended to throw people under the bus. It was one of the very few jobs that I gave less than 2 weeks' notice on and never looked back. I'm so glad to be out of there. Oh man, I felt that. I worked for a multimillionaire. He owned and operated a small business, 12 people including himself. That guy was two-faced. He came off as very charismatic and a wholesome story of someone who was born with nothing and became successful all on his own. After a while working, I saw that guy was a sociopathic monster. He was completely out of touch and didn't care about anything except profit. The only job I quit without notice. Turnover was atrocious, the company was already understaffed, and I decided they could look for my replacement along with the other employees who were smart enough to walk at the same time. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. They view life through the lens of time, over essentially anything else. Time is their most valuable resource, and anything that saves them time or unnecessary effort is worth whatever the price. I nannied for millionaires. It was new money, and they'd both grown up fairly blue-collar. They were very down-to-earth, giving, and kind. Their children, however, had no rules, no structure, or expectations inside of the house. Their previous nanny gave them whatever they wanted. That changed when I stepped in. I firmly believe kids need to know how to clean a bathroom, wash dishes, sweep a floor, and clean their rooms. It took about a year to get to that point, but I can rest easy knowing they're both currently in college and know how to clean a toilet. The way they get cash. Grew up in a very wealthy family who, though they had credit cards, never chose to use them. They also never had a debit card because they weren't really a thing in the 70s and 80s. My dad used cash almost exclusively. Our family offices were in a bank's high-rise, and once a month my dad would get cash delivered up to his office from the bank by a security guard. It would come in a sealed clear plastic envelope with a sheet of paper certifying the amount delivered. If he was making a big purchase like a car, he'd get that amount rounded up to the nearest 1,000, and if I was lucky enough to be in the office at the time, I'd get $100 for peeling off the excess cash from the stack. If we were traveling, it wasn't uncommon for him to request a couple of $100,000 at a time. This would also come sealed in a clear bag, but the bank would send an assistant with a counting machine to verify the amount in front of our bookkeeper. My dad died before the 90s, and I never once saw him step into a bank lobby or a bank drive-thru. In his business, he also got dozens of random amount checks every month, which would go into a file and be sent to his personal banker to be deposited. Our business could also get loans with just a phone call. I remember my grandfather telling our banker to arrange a multi-million-dollar loan in the early 80s for some radio stations he was buying, and our banker's reaction was just a simple nod. I directly worked for 3 before. They were always busy. They value their time a lot. One of them is a celebrity. The other 2, who were former Wall Street bankers, were doing business trips from one country to another so frequently it was as if they were just commuting from one local city to another. This was pre-pandemic. I do consulting for public companies and worked directly with CEOs and board members. So they're all multi-millionaires, but only a couple in the 3 comma club. First, there's no demarcation between personal and professional time. We should set up a call, meaning vaguely next week, and they'll respond with, "I am free at 10 a.m. on Sunday while I'm at my kid's ski lesson." And second, they ask a million questions, about every detail. This is the #1 personality trait I've noticed. The critical thinking is to the point where if you misspeak one word that's easily well understood, they will question you to be certain. I think this is one of many factors that has made them so successful. I worked for a self-made billionaire. His father was a tradesman without the means to support his post-high school education. He was able to attend a prestigious university on a hockey scholarship. He graduated at the top of his class, later attaining his MBA from Harvard Business School, served in World War II, passed his CPA exam, and went on to earn a law degree from Loyola. He founded a law firm and taught at law school in the mornings and evenings for 25 years. He established a multifaceted business, insurance, food and beverage distribution, and car dealerships, with 40 wholly owned subsidiaries. Each year he'd attend dozens of industry conventions and trade shows, often as the keynote speaker. While not speaking or transacting business, he'd traipse the aisles of vendors. His obsession and hobby was to visit the various booths, scooping up bag after bag of free stationery, pens, pencils, pads, stuff like that. Returning to the office after these excursions, he'd proudly hand several bags of booty to his administrative assistant and tell him or her that those were to be used to supplement his various companies' office supplies. He couldn't understand why these things were being given away for free. During his life, he donated millions upon millions of dollars, the greater part of his wealth, to charity, children's hospitals, and institutions of higher learning. One of the most genuine and kindest people I've ever met, but my god, that's stationary. Doesn't drive? Has a driver, and he doesn't sit in the back of a Rolls or limo. He has a frickin' Mercedes van with tinted windows. There's a PlayStation 5, bar, couch, small writing desk, and even a frickin' painting hanging in there. I haven't ever seen him wear a suit. Cargo shorts, Swatch watch, wedding ring, and old running shoes. Shops online and buys like pretty cheap stuff and compares prices. Orders food online but compares restaurant prices and value for money. Doesn't have a jet but flies first class everywhere. Doesn't have a yacht but rents staffed yachts. If he does drive, it's a Mini Cooper. He's had the same Android phone for a few years. Goes to mid-level bars and restaurants, nothing exclusive. Yeah, I'd imagine that old habits die hard if you come from less wealthy backgrounds and get lucky enough to make it big. That Mercedes mobile office sounds wild, though. I've worked in 2 companies that went from nothing to 2 billion sales in 20 years. The founders were all engineers and still worked alongside us. My favorite one used to ask permission to sit at my lunch table. He's easily the greatest human being I've ever known. You'd never know the kind of money he had if you saw him. He still drove the car he restored himself in college. He'd drive across town to save 5 cents a gallon on gas. Just from his public stock trades, we knew he had hundreds of millions, though this was in the 90s. I still talk to him. I emailed him last week. Honestly, all of the founders have been something like him, although he was the greatest one. The others did spend their money, though, sometimes extravagantly. One, for example, had married a history major and had the hobby of relocating historic buildings to his property. His house had museum-quality antiques, such as George Washington's dinner table, and he actually used them. I guess by the strictest definition, I'm a multimillionaire, as the first digit of my Fidelity account does go to 2 sometimes. As a nearly 50-year-old engineer, that's not unusual, though. Millionaires aren't what they used to be. I've had the opportunity to meet a famous billionaire a handful of times and just get a glimpse into what his life is like. It's absolutely unfathomable. The thing that stands out to me is the literal army of people that he has working for him. Never mind the fact that he owns a company with thousands of employees, he has likely hundreds of staff that have full-time jobs dedicated to various aspects of his personal life. He has the regular housekeeping staff to manage his multiple properties, pilots, chefs, personal assistants and stuff that any billionaire Joe has, but here are some crazy examples of the people he has. He likes cars, like a lot. He has a salaried, full-time car restoration expert with a team of engineers and technicians working under that guy. He has an art collection of untold vastness with a full-time curator and sourcing experts. He was tired of the restaurant scene in his hometown, so he created his own restaurant and now has a whole chain of them around the globe. He sources the beef for his restaurants from his own 1,500-acre ranch. Literally anything in the world this man wants, he has people already working for him who'll make it so. It boggles my mind whenever I think about it. The pure cost of all those things, and he'll never even make a dent in his net worth. I work with millionaires and a few billionaires. Most of them work non-stop. There's no boundary between workday, holiday, and weekend. But there's also no boundary between friend, family, and coworker a lot of times. It's easy to forget the cost of things when money is meaningless. When a $500,000 Ferrari is the financial equivalent to a gallon of milk for most families, then spending 20 grand on a party that includes private chefs and a bar staff is nothing. What happened recently was that someone mentioned there were a bunch of kids in my school who were getting trained at trade schools for jobs. But the certification exam was $350, so only 2 kids out of the 35 in our pilot program got certified. It was hard for anyone in that room to understand how these families couldn't come up with the $350 if they had the whole year to prepare. Most people in that room bill at $250 to $500 an hour if they work at all. 2 days ago, someone took me out to lunch and the bill was $250. But since it's Christmas season and the waitress was really great, he tipped $250. A different time we went out for drinks, and the bartender was one of those, tell me what you like and I'll make you something, people. The lady goes to pay and just writes math in the tip line and put $500 on the total for what was less than 3 drinks a person for 4 of us. On the other hand, there are lots of times when someone says something completely off the wall, elitist. I grew up incredibly poor, and some of these people are 5th and 10th generation wealth. They grew up with maids and butlers and private planes, and their great-grandparents have buildings all over the US named after them. One time, one of them was talking about how she went to Walmart to people watch and never felt unsafe even though it was in the black part of town. Her words. She tried to, quote, make some black friends because if she could befriend them, then she could educate them on better financial decisions. It was such a condescending and racist approach, we had to counsel her to never do that again. Another guy says things like, oh, the blacks will do X, and he thinks he's very woke. Aside from all that, there's a general loss of touch with what everyday people face. One of my friends is going to be a billionaire soon. His father is dying, and he's the sole heir to the family fortune. He already had access to it, but he chooses to live a middle-class life instead. It's important to him to teach his kids the value of hard work. So he's basically the exception. I worked as a nanny to an ultra-rich family, and they were one of the nicest people I've met, and treated everyone super kind. I was thankful they're not the almond type of mum with the extra gentle parenting. They wanted me to discipline their kids, and these kids had never had an iPad when I was with them for the 4 years as well. Some of the most well-behaved kids I've worked with. The parents were extra thankful and appreciative. Made me feel welcome and part of the family. Guys, what do women do that they think is okay, but it's actually really creepy? Honestly, hands down, women who exploit the emotions of men. We may not all cry in the movie theater, but we're not incapable of experiencing deep, painful emotional wounds. In general, it seems to be more acceptable for women to rag on guys for our image, like our height, weight, or income, while the flip side being that men cannot criticize women without being a pig. So yeah, women who nitpick guys for superficial reasons are creepy, arrogant, and covered with more red flags than a game of Minesweeper. Being hypocritical about sexism. They hear about a guy hitting a girl? Oh, what a butthole. They hear about a girl hitting a guy? Well, what did he do? Older guy hitting on a much younger woman? What a creep. Older woman hitting on a much younger man? You get it, girl. Making small eggplant jokes? Funny. Making fat jokes about men? Funny. Making short jokes about men? Funny. Making any jokes about a woman's appearance? Super not okay. Wife bragged to friends about our bedroom life. We live in a small town, and it now feels like everywhere I go I'm being giggled at and smiled at. It's really violating. I had a girlfriend who'd do that too. I told her to stop, but she said it was all good things. I had her friends asking for more details and if I could give their boyfriends tips. I asked my girlfriend if she'd like it if I discussed with my friends about how her downstairs looked, felt, and tasted. She said that was different and gross. Yeah, nah. Gotta love those double standards. Hey honey, the boys want to know how you keep your hoo-ha so tight so they can pass your tips along to their wives. You see how that sounds? Tickling and getting angry at me when I don't like it. Girls, I don't like getting tickled. I really hate it. I don't care that it's some way to show affection. I don't want it, and for fudge's sake, it's not my problem, and I don't have to man up and take it. What the hell? No means no. Always asking if I got flirted with, no matter where I go. Did anyone flirt with you? What the hell? It was flag football. Who would flirt with me at flag football? I don't know of this sport, but I'll take your word for it. Now, at the time of writing, my partner has never been a paranoid person, but maybe if she starts asking if anyone at Games Workshop tried to hit on me, I'll know that she's hit a similar level of problematic jealousy. Don't know if it's just me, but the baby voice and behavior, that really puts me off. One annoying girl that unfortunately hung out with my friend group kept doing this to my friend. I think she liked him. I proceeded to baby voice it to my friend immediately after she did it, and it killed it pretty quickly. You know what you don't like men doing? Just don't do that. Just apply that to literally everything in life and you'll come out ahead. Tell me that my almost 2-year-old son is so handsome and is gonna break hearts and be a lady killer. If I rolled up to the park and told her mum how good-looking her daughter was and that all the boys are going to want her, they'd call the cops. It's definitely not exclusively a woman thing, but my ex would screenshot our text conversations and send them to her family and friends for reactions. Like mundane conversations, not even anything interesting. It felt like a very creepy violation of my privacy. Also, she was an idiot. I hope you see this, Laura. Haha, this sounds like one of my exes, who was also named Laura. Remember folks, there's plenty of Lauras in the sea. You have to install this GPS tracking app on your phone so I know where you are at any time I want to check. Oh boy, I'm so glad my wife doesn't need to check up on me. Her friend, on the other hand, has a boyfriend that's required to have the app installed in order to be in a relationship with her. The kicker? She feels that she doesn't need the app installed because she won't cheat. I feel so bad for that guy. That just isn't fair. Late to the party, but I haven't seen this mentioned yet. Distributed undressed pictures they get from guys to their friends without permission. I've caught several women doing it and they'll argue about it if asked to stop. Yet another example of it only being an issue if the genders are reversed. Double standards and what constitutes an okay way to hit on someone of your preferred gender. The way girls share really personal things about guys in relation to how good they are in bed. Society and the media would have you believe that guys talk about whoopee all the time and just objectify the women they've slept with. I don't know if maybe I'm just hanging out with the wrong people, but honestly, the most you usually get out of a guy is that they did the deed with a girl and maybe a high five. And the only time we discuss details are when you're just trading stories. But my girl mates tend to immediately report on things to their friends and share details that honestly could be embarrassing or uncomfortable for the guy. It makes me really uncomfortable and get creeped out to think that if I sleep with a woman, I just have to accept that all of her friends are going to know every detail about the experience. Size, performance, how long it lasted, and how I look. It just feels like a huge breach of privacy. When a woman sees a single dad with his kid and feels like it's okay to tell them that they're doing great, I get they may feel like they're being supportive or whatever, but the stigma behind guys not knowing how to raise a kid is infuriating. I have 50-50 custody of my child and she's raised brilliantly by both me and her mum. I can guarantee mum never gets random praises just for walking through a shop with our child though. It's not supportive, it's condescending as heck, and please stop. I've seen a few comments about accepting compliments. My daughter's an absolute delight and always gets genuine compliments from passers-by. These I take with pride and I smile. The problem is from the people who approach in shock to see a dad alone with his kid, and think he's either babysitting or just lost without a woman to tell him how to raise his kid and needs a patronizing pat on the back. Just to clarify, I always respond with a smile and thank you regardless of the way I'm approached. I'm not raging mad about this, just internally frustrated. Okay, so this is something both me and my brother have had happen to us. We're both pretty young, around 20, but we were at some parties where people of all ages were around recently. At one party, we'd just finished performing with our orchestra, and we were still in our uniforms. Then, when I was getting some beers, some random lady of over 40 said to me, "Would you like to change clothes? I want to look like I'm in the orchestra." So naturally I'm like, well, I'd rather not, but she was like, "Oh, please," and she kept trying to talk to me. On another party, some lady, also of over 40, who was really seeking attention, started to hold my brother by the waist. My brother told me he was really weirded out by her. She tried to do this multiple times, even after I lured my brother away by pretending I needed to say something to him. I don't really know if this is something a lot of middle-aged ladies do, but them acting like that really weirded me out, and they seemed to do this as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I've had this happen a few times, but I don't know if it's more common or less common. When I go to a bar for a drink on a Friday night, say, I usually go with friends. I'll head to the bathroom and sometimes the bar will be crowded, so I'll have to slip through a group of people. Several times I'll get rubbed or caressed by women, sometimes on the groin, sometimes on the chest or shoulders. It's not wanted, nor am I signaling that I want to be touched. Just saying excuse me and going past. It bothers me every time. Asking the passwords to my social accounts or my phone. Asking their friends to give them explicit details of their bedroom encounters, especially if it's with a boyfriend. My ex told me that she and all her friends all shared D-pics of their boyfriends with each other. I was aware that they talked about them and their bedroom lives and whatnot, but showing pics is way over the line. Once I found out, that well dried up. I would never show my girlfriend's exposed photos to my male friends. Not just because that's wrong, but also, selfishly, I don't want them knowing what's going on. Call me a chauvinist if you want, but when I'm in a relationship with someone, I consider my junk theirs and their junk mine. At least when it comes to sharing with third parties. Oh, wow. Yeah, showing compromising photos of your partners is just straight up not okay. I'd never show any partner's photos to my friends, and to be frank, I think my friends would be appalled at the very suggestion. It should go the other way too. Went out with a group of guys last weekend. There were 6 of us, and this random girl started hanging around us like a lost puppy and just wouldn't leave. She was attractive, but so obviously desperate for attention that none of our group of guys really cared to give her any. This girl was just looking at everyone, batting her eyes and trying to hug everyone, but the guys were just pawning her off on each other. Maybe this is pathetic more than creepy, but if a guy did the same thing, he'd definitely be labeled as a creep, so yeah. She was creepy to me. I honestly thought that she was a working girl or something trying to sell services or some crap, the way she was approaching guys. It's not frickin' normal. Going to pride events or gay bars and grabbing the men whether they like it or not. F off, creep. When women say things like, "Oh, if I were 10 years younger," about underage guys, it's creepy and gives off predator vibes, and if the genders were reversed, you'd call the FBI. My dad married a woman when I was in middle school. She used to say this to me all the time. "If I were younger, I would have picked you, not your dad." It always weirded me out, but she was weird and creepy on other levels as well. Being way too open about their bedroom life. I've never in my life heard a guy describe exactly how his girlfriend's downstairs looked, or how she sounds when arriving. I think I've had 2 female friends, one former, who did similar things like this. The one I'm still friends with, I remember at one point we'd discuss our bedroom lives. Pretty sure she started it and eventually she got a bit too descriptive. The other one, we'd only been friends for like maybe a month at the time. During a late-night Skype call, she said something along the lines of, "Hey, could you just keep talking and ignore me?" She proceeded to, have fun with herself, as I rambled out some bullcrap in complete confusion. Pulling up the hem of your kilt to see if you're a true Scotsman. I was wearing a kilt in an indie movie, and 3 different actresses tried to peek under it to see if I was authentic. I told them, "No, I'm doing fight scenes. If you want to see my Johnson, just ask." And then they got mad at me. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Unwanted physical contact. I was out to dinner with a bunch of friends. Coincidentally, they were all women, and the waitress was hitting on me, which involved obvious compliments, which I don't care about, and putting her hands all over my shoulders and upper chest. We all had a laugh about that, but I was seriously weirded out by it, and with the genders reversed, I guarantee nobody would have been laughing about it. Man, y'all are in some unhealthy relationships. Making a new social media account after I block you. As a gay guy, women seem to think that it's okay to touch me in a general way, and sometimes even in a more inappropriate way. Lady, I don't know who you are, I don't care who you are. Sure, we had a nice conversation, but do not touch me. Don't wrap your hands around my legs so you can gawk at the size of my legs. Don't squeeze my pec, or think that I want a hug despite never having met you before. I am avoiding physical contact, not only to be respectful of your boundaries, but because I also have boundaries I don't want you to violate. Consent works both ways, always. Don't touch me. Social media stalking is a little crazy, especially from stuff before I met you. Touching my butt without consent. Sometimes I'm just performing my respiratory responsibilities and I feel a slight touch to my butt, and now I'm uncomfortable and confused because I'm too scared to turn around and find out who dared touch my precious keister. My ex demanded I take down a single picture of a platonic female friend who I've known over a decade and who is happily married to a mutual friend of ours. Said picture was part of a cluster of 8 total people. The other 7 pictures were just group pictures of said platonic friend and mostly other male friends. I'd wager that most women wouldn't do this and wouldn't think it was okay, but my now ex-girlfriend went through my phone without asking for permission. How has nobody mentioned the following? It's definitely not most women, but it does happen sometimes. They get teed off if you're not in the mood for bedroom fun. Like, "What the frick, you're a man, you're always in the mood. Do you not like me anymore?" No, Andrea, I'm just not feeling it that day, and yes, I liked you a lot. Disregarding consent with gay male friends, or disregarding consent with any men, period. There's a lot of women who think inappropriate touch is only when a man does it to a woman. Perving on men. So many times in the workplace, I've heard women say what they would like to do to a certain man, almost drooling in public. If a man said the same comments, they'd be fired. Straight girls who go to gay bars and be all like, "Yes, queen, ooh ooh," and straight girls who go to lesbian bars and get offended when a girl hits on them. Setting up traps to test us, being upset with something we said or did in your dreams, and lying to our faces when we ask direct questions like, "What is wrong?" and "How are you?" and stuff. This is only really for the gay men out there, I think, but having a girl instantly label you as her gay best friend as soon as she finds out you're gay. Like which? I don't even like you. Talking like a child. Yeah, this is not conducive to me wanting to have adult activities with someone, or even being able to take them seriously as an adult or intellectual equal in the times where it isn't some sort of flirtation technique. I'll take a partner that isn't going to make me feel like I've broken some sort of law, thanks. Touching me when you're a complete stranger. I'm in really good shape, and the amount of women who would touch my arms, shoulders, and chest when I'm out was way too high. Women invading men's personal space, but then proceeding to freak out when men invade theirs. This happened like 3 times in high school. Women call you attractive as their way of calling you ugly, you know? Like some weird sarcasm or reverse psychology thing. One of those 2 times, girls were walking behind me in the hallway. One of them taps my shoulder, so I turned around and she says, "She thinks you're cute," and then the other girl said, "She wants to go south of the border on you." I just told them I have a girlfriend because 1, I did, And 2, I know what they're doing and I walked faster. This might be a cultural thing for Latinos, but there were some kinda creepy comments said by female family members to my son when he was a toddler. They'd call him my boyfriend and ask for kisses in a very aggressive way. When I changed his diapers, they'd stand around and say, "Te cuyen say pee-pee," which roughly translates to, "Whose member is that?" Which led me to always change his diaper in a private room, even when I'm told that, "Oh, you can do it here, it's okay, we're all family." One of my aunts even commented on how his manhood has grown since he was a baby. Yeah, his whole body has grown. There's no need to talk about that specifically. Step away from my child. I guess this is all done in a cute or innocent way, but I never liked it. The admin assistant in my office tells me to smile at least once a week when I walk past her desk. Go F yourself. Commenting on my new girlfriend's posts. I'll add a bit of backstory. Me and the old girlfriend, we had a bad breakup. I broke up with her because I was tired of the routine, tired of dealing with the standards that she held me at. To be honest, I wanted to be cut loose, so I cut myself loose. She got a boyfriend quickly after. I just did my own thing. When me and the new girl started dating, my ex was commenting on every single thing she posted. I was blocked on every social media and on messages itself. I believe she was just trying to be passive-aggressive. It's not creepy, but purposefully bothering me because I'm cute when I'm mad. Ugh. Failing to realize that sometimes free time needs to be me time and shouldn't automatically be she time. Similarly, trying to capitalize all of my free time with activities. You can go to Karen's party by yourself. I don't know her, so stop trying to make me come along to what is clearly intended to be a girls' night out. After working 5 days a week, sometimes I don't want to have to stress about what my weekend is filling in with just to keep busy. It's okay to do nothing. Not so much creepy as overbearing, I guess, but trying to say they're the boss of my free time sucks. Oh, and the fallout for standing your ground also sucks. Asking us if we want to buy them a drink. The last time I was out, a girl had asked me this and I felt disrespected. She was extremely attractive, but opening a conversation by asking if I want to buy you a drink is not appreciative. It made me feel like she thought I was a buster or something. Not all of us like to spend money on random girls just for a chance to talk to them. Glamorizing the male body at work or in other non-casual situations. I've had coworkers speculating about the size of other coworkers' naughty bits in front of me, talking about exposed scenes of favorite actors, talking about marital aids, stuff like that. If a guy was similarly casual about a woman's body, it would be considered highly inappropriate, but women seem to get away with it as it's innocent fun. Touching you as the first step in hitting on you. I've had random girls at concerts walk up and grab my butt without saying a word and wait for a response or poke me somewhere and wink, again without saying anything. It's not enticing, it's just awkward and creepy. Let alone that it would look a lot worse if I did that, but for some reason they think it's just playful or whatever. Telling you how you feel because you didn't do something trivial. You don't love me, you didn't call me before you went to bed. No, I frickin' fell asleep because I was exhausted. Now I'm awake, still here, still love you, let's not make it a thing. She makes me suck her toes to wake her up. Most people pay extra for that. Maintaining a relationship with my mum even after we've broken up. Treating firemen in a way that you don't want to be treated, like as a soulless piece of meat for bedroom desires. I get why women don't like that, and we don't either. Keeping my frickin' clothes. Acting like mental illness is a personality trait, such as, "Sorry I said all those nasty things earlier, but I'm bipolar so it's okay and I didn't mean it." I should have been more clear at first. This is supposed to reference those who use their conditions as an excuse to continue saying or doing nasty things, or referencing those who pretend to be bipolar just so they can say nasty things and have a net to catch themselves in if they're called out. Creating a fake Instagram user with their group of friends and stalking guys through it. Trying to isolate us from friends, especially other women, and family because they want us to focus on the relationship and prioritizing her emotional needs over everyone else in our lives. It's under the guise of wanting to develop a bond and get to know us better, but if you're paying attention, you can tell what's really going on. And also, having gone through copious amounts of domestic awfulness training at work, both as a requirement for employment and as a part of the job since I record trainings, it's painfully obvious that this is something men do all the time to control women. Most of these answers consist of things that aren't limited by gender. Yes, absolutely. This video should be definitely viewed less as all women are evil and more as a list of things that nobody should do and that sometimes women get away with because of gender standards. Those standards hurt everyone, folks. I'm an attractive guy. I was a bartender and served tables for quite a while. The stuff women say and get away with saying is unreal. In my experience, women are just as bad as men when it comes to unwanted attention. Stealing my hat on nights out. I don't know what it is about girls and hats, but every bar has a group of girls who want to steal hats and think it's cute. No. Don't touch my hair. Just don't. I know it's long and partially dyed, and you might think that's cool or unusual for a male, but please don't touch it. I get extremely uncomfortable. As a man with long hair, I personally like it when people play with my hair, because it feels nice. Couldn't imagine what it's like when random people do it, though. Hit me up when you're 18, to young male models and whatnot on social media. Any guy would be torn a new butthole if he were to say that, yet it's totally acceptable from women. Daddy. I don't want to be your effing dad, I want to be effing your dad. If you could time travel, what would you write on a cave wall to mess with everyone? Test post, please ignore. Turns out time travel only works once per timeline. Sorry guys. This planet shall be our second home. Either, no, I didn't time travel, or we found out we can only go forward in time. Hi devs, I found a bug within our simulation. I was somehow transported back 100k years without any of my items, but I still have my abilities. If I could be transported back by tomorrow, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm an archaeologist, and I can safely say, no, it's not a ritual. Scrawled on the wall will mess with us forever. I would definitely put footprints on the ceiling. Hey, remember me, Michael? Remember telling me that my time machine would never actually work? Guess what? F you and your rules of space-time. Aliens, with a crude portrait of Giorgio Tsoukalos. Do not the cat. Kilroy was here. They have taken the bridge and the second hall. We've barred the gates, but cannot hold them for long. The ground shakes. Drums. Drums in the deep. We cannot get out. The shadow moves in the dark. We cannot get out. They are coming. God bless you for writing that, nameless nerd from the internet. But every archaeologist I've met has been a massive nerd as well, so I'm not sure they'd be freaked out as much as delighted. Pictures of dinosaurs and humans interacting, pyramids working as spaceships, accurate renditions of deep-sea animals. But to F with people the most, draw a world map to the best of my memory. I play Europa Universalis 4 a crap ton, so no problem getting the rough continents, right? It'll still be loads better than world maps for another 99,500 years. And then I'll mark one random place in every continent, North Pole and the Amazon especially, to reduce the ease of searching. I'd then add a bunch of arrows and circles around other stuff and call it a day. Maybe add in a few drawings of alien interactions and monsters and stuff. Thinking on it, I'd probably mark the Amazon, the Sahara, Chukotka, the Chukchi are my guilty pleasure in EU4, and the North and South Poles, Mexico City, the Ötztal Alps, Uluru, Hormuz, and Okinawa. It's a good balance between hard to search, spread out among the continents, and coincidental with some crap. Some of them are just memes. I think an inscription reading, I bet you're confused right now. C2H50H. If you're reading this, you've been in a coma for almost 20 years now. We're trying a new technique. We don't know where this message will end up in your dream, but we hope we're getting through. We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. I think that any words in any given modern language would make them freak out, but what I'd do is find out who was in the team and where they were born before I left. Then, once I got there, I'd put their name and birth date on the cave wall, and then I'd put the same date, let's say the 9th of September 21, and then I'd write, "The curse is true. Your days are numbered." Picture of dude with spear, picture of mammoth. Table of calculations showing what angle and power to throw the spear into the mammoth. Assuming man is traveling on one vector, mammoth is going on a different vector, wind is coming from third vector. Frictional coefficient of the ground taken into account for both man and mammoth. Parabolic trajectory of the spear fully mapped out. No units, words, or language of any kind. Make up all of the numbers and symbols used to disguise the fact that you initially calculated it using Arabic numerals. I have no clue if it's right, but I suspect that would provoke way more freakout than anything you have in a language that provably couldn't have existed back then. Because that's definitely a hoax, you just haven't proven as a hoax yet. My idea implies that they had fully fleshed out physics, multivariable calculus, and linear algebra 100,000 years ago. a picture of a chicken laying an egg, and a big number 1.
Wait, is the 1 closer to the chicken or closer to the egg? Because it makes a difference. To someone at least.
Here may be found the last words of Joseph of Arimathea. He who is valiant and pure of spirit may find the Holy Grail in the castle of Arg.
He must have died while carving it.
On May 28, 2016, prevent the child from entering the enclosure. I'd leave a bunch of fake records on transactions with an alien species. Write up a fake history of alien contact, and then make up a story recording a fake history of a conflict between an alien civilization and advanced humans. You know that S that everyone seems to remember writing in their notebooks in elementary school? I'd leave that. You may be wondering why I've gathered you all here today. Twice and twice shall he be marked. We live among you. In big, bold letters, simulation number 54286. Draw the complete solar system and then the nearest star system.
But you should draw it with a planet where the asteroid belt is, and write home next to that one.
Fun fact, there's a cave with an underwater entrance on an island near Puerto Rico. Pretty hard to get to, even with modern equipment. In the deepest part of the cave, mixed in with multiple layers of older indigenous paintings, there's a conquistador-era Spanish reading saying, "My God, what have we done here?" So maybe something like that. As far as I know, the island is Isla de Mona. 95% sure the article was on JSTOR, but I don't have access anymore, so I can't read it. I read it 2 years ago while doing research on the biology of the island. There are hot MILFs in your area. Leave by 2030. They do not come in peace. First, find the names of the people who discovered the cave and write, "Hey Frank, the archaeologist. Glad you could make it. Could you please watch your step here? I'm a very old cave." I would draw a frog birthing a human. This cave painting was brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Thanks, I hate it. I mean, it's objectively funny, but I hate it so damn much. I've never played that game, but I think at this point in my life I've heard multiple hours of adverts for it across YouTube, and now I have to add to that crap on the channel that I work on as well. This video is not sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. I would write my own name, date of birth, place of birth, and anything else generic that would identify my present self. This isn't really messing with them, but it could make my life a whole lot more interesting, that's for sure. As many have suggested now, I will add, "My happiness is crucial to the survival of mankind." Print F, open bracket, open quote, hello world, end quote, end bracket, space, semicolon. The nukes have dropped so long ago, yet the nuclear winter rages on. I've stopped trying to count the days. I don't think I'll live to see the end of the winter. I'm sorry, honey. I'll be up there with you soon. Put that into some really old language and bam, conspiracy theorists going crazy. You'll never know what era I lived in. In 100,000 years, they will return. Beware.
Hello, sweetie.
Multiple examples of modern languages. Dear Fry, our time together was short, but it was the best time of my life. Leela. The URL to this video, or the URL to a Rickroll.
Yes, the rumors are true. I, Queen Elizabeth II, am immortal. Why would she call herself Queen Elizabeth II if it's thousands of years before the first Elizabeth?
Several scientists have given a lot of thought to what kind of message you could send to a completely alien civilization, which they could decipher with the only assumption being that they live in the same universe as us. Naturally, a lot of these messages are just completely insane ways of saying anything, since it models all communication as a mathematical proof more than anything. For example, how do you communicate the idea of left and right when you have no idea what format an alien species will be experiencing your messages in? Obviously, using a relationship within the electroweak model, where charged weak gauge bosons only couple to left-handed quarks and leptons. I mean, completely basic stuff, right? How can we communicate the fact that our species reproduces through an exchange of DNA? Well, by assuming they have complete knowledge of organic chemistry and group theory, so that a simple reference to the chemical structure of DNA from a symbolic representation of the periodic table will tell them how our DNA is structured, allowing them to infer the rest, and a reference to the number 808-017-424794-886-459-904-961-710-750-000-000 in a table will immediately inform them you're talking about a form of symmetry. Any species who received one of these messages, of course, if they're ever sent out, would probably assume that humanity is some sort of super-intelligent species that innately understands the intricacies of the universe in a way that they never will. I would lay out a long and horribly intricate message like that, though, with no other meaning whatsoever, just an attempt to communicate and inform them that I was intelligent. I think the undeniable knowledge that something intelligent wanted to communicate once and failed right at the dawn of humanity would cause more chaos than any other message ever could. Either that or I could just draw a male anatomy on the wall. Dunno, either one is good, I guess. Dave, you know that time machine we made back in school for a joke science project? Yeah, it actually frickin' worked. Draw the Earth as a flat. You'll convince 1% of the idiots in the future. Long ago, the four nations lived in harmony. Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. List of things to do before dying. Time travel. Done. If I've time traveled, cause a pandemic that'll mess up the world for years. Done. Meet dinosaurs. Done. If I've met dinosaurs, bring back all of them during this pandemic. Almost done. I would list years of some of the biggest and most well-known natural disasters followed by their individual death tolls in chronological order. Then end the list at like 2050, written in much larger font size and without a death toll. Somebody will figure out what the other numbers represent, and then they'll do the rest of the work for me. Betty White was here. I hate to be that guy, but any modern references would result in the cave being considered contaminated, and they probably wouldn't do expensive carbon dating techniques to determine that it's actually 100,000 years old. Well, you're that guy. Are you happy? Your facts and deduction have no place in this video. Be gone with you. Be gone, I say! Time is a flat circle. This is the story all about how my life got turned upside down. Be sure to drink your Ovaltine. I think I'd put a caveman grocery list. Meat, berries, new club, pelt. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Based on the usual archaeological response of, if we don't know what it is, we'll list it as a ritual object, I would write, I'm not here for a long time, but I'm here for a good time. Draw caveman stick paintings of humans hunting giant Johnsons and scenarios of war. Construct a whole lore about humanity and the male anatomy-shaped beasts. Time travelers exist in all of the ancient scripts. We get signal. All your base are belong to us. Here I sit, broken-hearted, tried to poop, but only farted. Later today, I took a chance. Tried to toot, but crapped my pants. We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. There's always money in the banana stand. The Bill Cipher Triangle. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Rosebud. First, some accurate disasters. Then, the world ends in 2020. Time loop has already started by the time you're reading this. 15 minutes could save you 15% more on car insurance. Geico switch today to find out all the ways you could save. You just lost the game. Frickin' hell, I hate and I love this at the same time. 26, 5, 17, 39, 21, and 4. The lucky numbers on my fortune cookie. Should take them a while to figure that one out. An indistinguishable copy of the golden record carried on board the Voyager spacecraft with a message from the last line of the poem Ozymandias. Of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. It's free real estate. The secret to complete, perfect, eternal happiness and the meaning to existence is, and then the rest of the rock wall appears to have been spray-painted by tourists. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Don't go to space. They will find you as well. Loss.
Imagine they discover it in like the 80s and they're like, what could this mean? Then in like 2014, what? I'd write some sort of diary of non-existent events. My name is Aveen. I fear we may perish on this planet, so I'm writing this in the hope that someone will remember us. It's been 21 days since we got stranded. My boyfriend, Adam, has been very stressed about the situation. We just hope our ship, Gord, named after our pet, finds us before it's too late. My name is Adam. My boyfriend, Eve, has been trying to get me to write something on this wall as a way to relieve stress. I do not think it will work, yet here I am. It's been 118 years since we got stranded and Eve is not well. He ate some sort of fruit and now he's hallucinating about talking reptiles. We've befriended some locals. They're curious creatures. They seem to have 4 hands and live up in giant wood-like plants, similar to ligmas on our own homeworld. 5 cycles have went by now. We've given up hope of rescue. Me and Eve are no longer together. I caught him having relations with one of the locals. We decided to name the species Homo. I just hope for his sake our gene pool is not compatible, although I'm curious to know what would happen. 10 cycles being stranded on this planet have changed us. I almost wasn't going to write this, but it turns out our genetics are compatible. Myself and Adam have created our own tribes. I feel ashamed to say this, but we've created a new species. We have each fathered over 500 of these beings. E equals MC squared. I know it's tempting to write in a modern language, but that would really just mess with them for a bit, and most likely be written off as modern vandalism anyway. If you can read this, then it means advertising works. Call, put a phone number in, to rent this space. I'll write, oh hey, how was COVID? Archaeologists in Cave Expedition January 2020 go, wait, what? I've managed to make the time jump. The universe reset was a success, and heat death was prevented. I must now destroy the machine to keep the universe safe. Best wishes, Grigory Rasputin. I would draw an eggplant bus. Fun fact, this has been done in ancient Rome already. Romans believed phalluses to be lucky. They were frequently placed at crossroads and hung or carved near doorways, like we like to hang horseshoes over our doors sometimes. They also drew them on walls, like a lot, because people always have and always will, because it's funny. OJ did it. All you had to do was follow the damn train, CJ. As we've established, all archaeologists are damn nerds, so this would trigger a compulsive rage that may well result in the destruction of your work. But hey, it's your carving. President Kennedy, just take your nukes out of Turkey. Also, don't ever go to Dallas in November 1963. I put the date January 2026 and then a crude drawing of a large meteor crashing into Earth, or some sort of other apocalyptic event. A diagram with our solar system, but with Mars indicated as blue and labelled as the capital and Earth as a settlement. Then follow up with a few closer constellations with planets indicated around certain stars as colonies. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. There's a monster in here. Turn back now. We denied climate change when we could have stopped relying on petroleum. Our people are going extinct as the Ice Age approaches. We did this to ourselves. The time, date, and coordinates of my own birth. Get a small cult going. You are wrong. When gravity falls and Earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye. Grubhub gives you perks. Kilroy was here. DNA Helix. Hello World. Just published a book. Titled it The Bible. Made it all up myself. Snape kills Dumbledore. I guess I'd also add a warning to stop the cursed child from being written and published. I landed too early. By the time anyone finds this, it may already be too late. Beware. Ligma. A sketch of Doc Brown's flux capacitor. The cake is a lie and Bush did September 11th. 7-Eleven was a part-time job. Don't dead. Open inside. There will be no roaring 2020s. Sad face. A pictographic story of aliens having a war, leaving the planet as it blows up, traveling to Earth, and either crash landing or having a war once they got here and having to start over. This is either the story of humans or add an extra step of how the aliens enslaved humanity and make it about cats. Elizabeth was here. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. Hey Lois, I time traveled. I see you, men of the future. I see you. There is no life in the void, only death. New cave, who dis? They came as gods. It was a lie. Then draw a picture of every religion enslaving humans. I would absolutely write the YouTube URL for Never Gonna Give You Up. I'd use some kind of high-tech tool and metal inlay with very modern font to write Earth version 107. We just can't seem to get it right. Looks like this is another one headed towards Dollar Generals and expensive razor blades. Recommend we move on and leave them to it. Taking unicorns with us. Commanding Officer Frisbee Burglecut, Space Force. It's all downhill from here. This day we sign peace with the Morocrons of outer space. Hey, so what's the deal with the end of The Sopranos? Ryan started the fire. Save Ferris. By GME in 2019. The winning lottery numbers to all the super millions in order, then a bunch of random numbers afterwards. When I get back to the present, I'd point out what it is and have a ton of fun watching everyone freak out and start buying tickets. Protect Tupac at all costs. He is the key to everything. Start writing in Pigpen, but make it random words that mean nothing. The mammoths. Our last cities have fallen, our last fields destroyed. We've lost so much to these hyper-intelligent telekinetic elephants, and yet they have a weakness. Stone is the secret. Their telekinesis affects metals, which explains how they wiped out our civilization so quickly. However, we think that perhaps a few brave warriors with stone and wood weapons may be able to successfully ambush one. Our doom may seem certain, but we maintain the slimmest of hopes that we will prevail. We will kill them. We will give our children the chance to build a real civilization. I don't know how long this will take or how far we'll need to go, but the Mammoth Eradication War begins today. You will carry a calculator in your pocket. Okay, the narrator is missing something here. My goodness, is it a joke about cell phones or something? Is this a pop culture reference? Do archaeologists carry calculators as a standard? I think it's 139 answers. This is starting to mess with my brain. I think this might be the most answers we've ever put in one video to hit 20 minutes. I need to finish this and lie down. Probably a dancing duck meme. Maxwell's equations. 3.1417 followed by a Yo Mama joke in Latin. Have you seen my TARDIS? Yo, what's up guys? This cave is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, goddammit. There's an imposter among us. The lyrics to Africa by Toto. What is love? Baby don't hurt me no more. Save the cheerleader, save the world. We were wrong. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Time travel go brrr. Just go with the classics. Draw a troll face. I would write, the world is moving weird. Well, see you in 100,000 years. It's Brittany, witch. An image of pie. I knew this would happen. Love Nostradamus. What is a fact that sounds completely false but is infuriatingly true? Virginia goes geographically farther west than West Virginia. The fact that it took 4 times the time to go from bronze to iron swords than iron swords to nuclear weapons. That unlockable means both able to be unlocked and unable to be locked. My 11-year-old pointed this out and I had nothing for her other than a blank stare and then thinking, well, crap, good job. Sympathetic ophthalmia. When you get an injury in one eye and it loses vision, your other eye may randomly decide to go blind as well for no reason. It can happen months or years after the original injury. Sounds like an old wives' tale or some 19th century quack's fear-mongering, but it's completely true. Well, it's not really no reason. Your eye is essentially insulated from your blood, as in the blood isn't ever in contact with the structures of the eye. And hence your immune system is unfamiliar with your eye proteins. When you get a penetrating eye injury, all of your eye proteins and structures, it's mostly retinal pigments and also some other proteins, they get exposed to your blood and immune system. Your immune system freaks out, assumes that these are foreign structures, and like the good protector it is, decides to produce antibodies against these structures. Now, antibodies are tiny and can go almost anywhere, so these antibodies go hunting for similar foreign structures elsewhere in your body, and they find them in your other eye. They go and attack and destroy those structures, and hence you end up with sympathetic ophthalmia. They also go destroy those parts of your injured eye that may have been spared by the original injury. You then end up with bilateral, as in involving both eyes, granulomatous, made up of a bunch of immune cells, uveitis, inflammation of the uvea, a layer of the eye which lies just beneath the cornea and includes the iris and some other structures. This may even cause blindness. So basically, sympathetic ophthalmia is a sign that your immune system is doing an excellent job protecting you. Let's show some sympathy to our sympathetic ophthalmia-causing super-efficient immune systems. Thanks, I hate it. I mean, our bodies have painstakingly developed to let us survive just about anything we can face on our planet within reason, but there are still little kinks in the code like our immune system systematically shutting down what's left of our eyes after they become aware of them. Well, thank you for all the many things you do that aren't crap, immune system. It's actually a pretty sweet deal that we have in the grand lineup of species. The fact that this sentence is grammatically correct. All the faith he had no effect. Installing traffic lights costs cities between $250,000 and $500,000 at an intersection. The word helicopter is not made up of the words heli and copter, but rather helico and pater, which are Greek for spiral and wing. There are more slaves in the world right now than when we were at the peak of the Atlantic slave trade. Flammable and inflammable mean the same thing. Well, there's actually a good reason for that. Flammable is not considered a scientifically acceptable term for things that catch fire easily. Inflammable is the proper term and comes from the word inflame. But flammable caught on because inflammable sounds too much like resistant to being caught on fire, which is potentially quite a dangerous misunderstanding. As of 2019, the government pays Microsoft to keep Windows XP running because the government uses Windows XP a lot. A lot of trains where I live, Brisbane, run Windows 95 still. The terms hardwood and softwood have nothing to do with the actual hardness of the wood, but what kind of seeds the tree produces. I mean, it basically just means conifer versus angiosperm, and virtually all conifers have soft wood. It's just that angiosperms, or hardwood, can have soft or hard wood. It's not that far off in my opinion. Coolth is an actual word, and is the opposite of warmth. I love using it, but my girlfriend frickin' hates it. If you mix water and sawdust and freeze it, the resulting ice melts extremely slowly, like weeks at room temperature slowly. We used to chop and saw firewood for the house in the winters, and there were always these stupid chunks of sawdust hanging around well into spring when all the rest had melted. Now I know why. Thanks. Slightly crazier, they wanted to build a giant aircraft carrier in World War II out of this stuff and park it in the Atlantic. Would supposedly be very torpedo and weapon resistant, as they could just refreeze chunks that were blown out. Research ultimately confirmed that a full-size ice or pykrete vessel would cost more money and machinery than a whole fleet of conventional aircraft carriers. All crisps, that's chips for you Americans, in the UK go out of date on a Saturday. It annoys me because a smug friend pointed it out and I've been unsuccessful in proving him wrong. I had to Google this and I found this from Walker's. In the manufacturing sites, we work on production weeks, which start on a Sunday. All product produced in that week will have the same best before date. As the week ends on the Saturday, the best before date will always end on a Saturday. Cannoli is already in plural form. The singular form is cannolo. A spaghetto is one noodle of spaghetti. I thought a spaghetto was a rough part of Italy. I was talking to my mum about bees one day and telling her where queen bees come from. Basically, they start out as normal bee larvae, but the worker bees feed it special royal jelly that makes it grow into a queen bee. And as the words came out of my mouth, I realized how fake it sounded. My mum didn't believe me, and I had to Google it later to prove it to her. Well, actually, all bees start with royal jelly. Other bees, with the exception of about 5 females, are just weaned off it very quickly. Those lucky 5 are allowed to eat the jelly until eventually one of the 4 kills her sisters and becomes queen. As crazy as it sounds, the jelly actually changes the generic expression of the bee, but at birth, bees have general genetic information. Walmart is the world's largest retailer of diamonds. And I don't know if it's true anymore, but Walmart also used to be the largest dealer of arms and ammunition in America. Until as late as the 1980s, newborns were not given pain medicine during surgery, only muscle relaxant, as it was falsely accepted that they couldn't feel pain. Imagine going through the pain of a surgery but being unable to move due to a muscle relaxant. There are more privately owned tigers in Texas than there are wild tigers on the rest of the planet combined. Mistletoe is a parasite. Crocodiles can climb trees. Sun's Day, Moon's Day, Tyr or Choose Day, Odin or Woden's Day, Thor's Day, Freya's Day, Saturn's Day. 2 celestial bodies, 4 Norse gods, and suddenly 1 butthole from the Roman pantheon for no gosh darn reason. What the fudge is Saturn doing there? The millionaire heir to the fortune of the American chemical company DuPont, Robert H. Richards, has avoided prison after crimes that are literally too awful to risk saying on YouTube. Like, think the worst thing you can do short of murder, and even that would be debatable. He got off because a judge considered he wouldn't fare well in prison. I'm sorry if this ruined your day, that wasn't my intent. You want to feel even more angry? That judge still has her job. You want to feel even more angry? Then Attorney General of Delaware, Beau Biden, Joe Biden's late son, publicly approved of the sentence. You want to feel even more angry? The sentence included a requirement that Richards attend an inpatient treatment program. He still hasn't done it. He was sentenced in 2009. Well, there's a grim reminder of how it is in most parts of the world. Some of us can get decades in prison for possession of minor substances, and the rich can literally do something so obscene I can't even contemplate it, ignore their wrist slap of a punishment, and get away scot-free. Different rules for thee from me. Pretty much anything to do with naked mole rats. They're neither related to moles nor rats. They can use their teeth like chopsticks, and they have the social hierarchy of bees, and oh yeah, they're cold-blooded. They're also entirely resistant to cancer. Scientists tried to force a bunch of them to develop cancer, and only like 2 actually ended up with it. Imagine being born naturally resistant to cancer just to have some very smart people working together to give it to you anyways. Bananas are berries, but strawberries are not berries. The fruit of the potato plant is a berry as well, and it's toxic. The fact that in an electric circuit, even though the electric current is electrons moving from negative pole to positive pole, the definition of current flow is that it moves from positive to negative. And similar misses in definitions in physics and science that they just decided to keep because changing definitions would be confusing at first. Okay, this doesn't make me so angry about it, but it makes me feel weird that cheetahs can't roar. They can only meow like the big, normal house cats they are. In the cat family, cats can either roar or purr, but they can't do both. It's to do with the structure of the throat. I'm sorry that cheetahs can't roar, but I hope you found some solace in the thought of them purring happily. Incidentally, cheetahs are different from other big cats in other ways too. They can't retract their claws completely. The fact that you can sneeze and or cough so hard that you can break a rib. Like, how? Why? English bulldogs can't give birth naturally. They can't mate naturally either. The males are literally physically incapable of mounting the females. We have to help them every step of the way. Humanity has ruined them, and it's time to let them die. There were still mammoths roaming the earth as the pyramids were being built. It makes me angry because I feel like everything I knew was a lie. That a black panther isn't its own species of big cat, but rather any big cat species that is born black. Reno, Nevada is further west than Los Angeles, California. The top 15 cargo ships of the world produce more sulfur and other greenhouse gases than all the world's cars put together. Not so much completely false, but someone once told me that walking is just controlled falling, and for whatever reason that logic completely teased me off because it's not technically wrong, but I hate it anyway. Sea otters commit the unspeakable act on baby seals. They will also kill the seals and continue using it for up to a week. You're welcome. I didn't need to know this information, and now everything sucks. MKUltra was real. Our tax money went to making brainwashed assassins. A flock of crows is called a murder, but a flock of ravens is called an unkindness or a conspiracy. Who even comes up with this crap? It's essentially a meme from the 1400s that stuck. The Book of St. Albans from 1486 records a big long list of similarly humorous names for groups of things, including a blast of hunters and a melody of harpers among other things. Meme responsibly, people, it might stick around for 500 years. There is only one country between Norway and North Korea. What can I tell you? The motherland is very large. Funding for a public school is cut if standardized test scores are too low. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. That the capybara is so useless that its main defense is to stand still and wait to be eaten. It's basically a vegetable made from meat. Yo, talking about capybaras, I thought they were great animals, and they were definitely my favorites at the local animal sanctuary. However, I helped out one day cleaning up all the animal shelters, and they just have the one capybara who's completely separated from the rest. Thought it was so weird, so I asked why he was all alone. Turns out they put him together with other animals and other capybara, and every morning there'd be animals with severe bites or dead capybaras, and they couldn't figure out what the frick was going wrong. They placed a night camera. Turns out that capybara that's now separated was the goddamn problem. He murdered them. He's an absolute psycho. Someone lost their stomach after swallowing liquid nitrogen. To clarify, I should mention this because when I first heard this, I thought it was total BS, and I was super bummed when it turned out to be true. That movie about DC villains with Will Smith has won more Oscars than The Shawshank Redemption. I'm so glad I can help the internet unite with some rage-inducing trivia. From 1719 through 1721, prisoners in Paris were given their freedom if they agreed to marry a working girl and move to Louisiana. It explains a lot about Louisiana. Blind people don't see black. They just don't see. The only way to understand is to be blind, and that infuriates me. It's easy to imagine being deaf and just not hearing anything, but being blind is a mind F. You don't see black, you don't see nothing. You just don't see. Period. We're closer to 2050 than we are to the 90s. Hey, you shut the fudge up. I don't care how real that statement is or how much it threatened to invert my entire soul just now. I refuse to have it spoken any more in my presence. Be gone from here. Apple turned their China customer data stored on iCloud over to the Chinese government. The pronunciations of Kansas and Arkansas are not at all similar. Taco Bell was voted the best Mexican restaurant in the country, and I understand why it happened, but it's just wrong. There's no road connecting North and South America despite being connected by land. Lions have barbs on their members. Pandas are usually born as twins, but the mother nearly always abandons one, so zoos have to switch out the panda babies to trick the mother into caring for both. Most people don't know how to water. For example, I bet that if you're watering your tree, you aren't doing anything besides watering your neighbor's tree and vice versa for your neighbor. It's recommended that you water 3 times the canopy width away from your tree. So we're talking like a full-on sprinkler for wide canopy trees like apple trees. We do this because the roots close to the tree exchange nutrients with fungi in the soil. You can actually change the root system underneath and bring the water-seeking roots closer to the tree by cutting back the canopy, as 3 times the canopy length is the golden rule of thumb. In case anyone ever wonders why this would be infuriating as a fact, imagine how many people watered their tree only to find theirs die and the neighbor that never waters theirs has a perfectly happy tree. All the planets in our solar system can fit between the Earth and the Moon back to back. What the frick? Trying to understand the sheer size of space is infuriating. Even though this is a fact I've been aware of since I was a small child, any sort of comparison of astronomical distance beyond it is difficult to comprehend. Like how it's essentially impossible to have a sensible scale diagram of the solar system, since to have anything beyond the Sun and Jupiter visible, it needs to be a meter or so across. Private persons make money by meeting quotas to keep prisons full. They technically fail or aren't successful if they can't keep their cells full. They're actually among those lobbying to keep Mary J. illegal. I wonder why. Outside the culinary world, the concept of vegetables has literally no meaning. It's entirely arbitrary. Another weird fact, it has some legal meaning, as vegetables face different customs regulations. In that context, the Supreme Court of the US once officially declared that a tomato is a vegetable and not a fruit. Nobody believes me when I tell them that cream of tartar is literally the glittery remains of the fermentation process left on the corks of wine bottles. The entire world population could fit in Texas if people lived as densely as Manhattan, like 1,000 square feet per person. It's frustrating that so many problems of global resource disparity could probably be solved by bringing people closer together. Same idea for supporting people in countries with challenging living circumstances, whether environment, poverty, violence, or other. I mean, Texas is hot, but it's not that bad. Humans don't combine spatial awareness and language until age 6. This is more mature or adult thinking. Java runs on 6 billion devices. Dolphins are evil. They reproduce mostly by the unspeakable act. Males will try to do the deed this way with female dolphins and animals of other species, including humans. They will drown dolphin offspring so the mother is ready to mate again sooner. They'll bite the heads off fish and do equally obscene things into the dead bodies. They do save people in rare cases, but based on how they treat other species, I'd say they're more likely to do terrible things to you as you drown. The rings of Saturn are younger than dinosaurs. The platypus sweats milk as it lacks the correct chesty bits. Thank you for listening. I also want to thank Platypus for being weird. There's a huge patch of garbage 3 times the size of France floating around the Pacific Ocean. According to a 2015 study in the Journal of Science, the top 6 countries responsible for dumping ocean garbage are China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Most expiry dates are suggestions, and it's up to you to see if food has gone bad or not. It's not even illegal to sell past expiry as long as the customer is informed. Cue me throwing away goods one day after their expiry date. It took me the longest time to accept this, and I'm still iffy about it. I can't see my forehead. Pineapples grow out of the ground for some reason. How about the news headlines that end up being real on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me? 1 in 20 British people do not believe the atrocities against the Jewish people leading up to and during World War II happened. The phrase, "I never said she stole my money" can have 7 different meanings depending on which word you stress. I never said she stole my money. 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 Well, blow me down, you weren't wrong. Also, almost all of them sound weirdly catty. Or maybe that's just my voice. The Monty Hall problem. The answer makes total sense and no sense at all at the same damn time. Even though El Chapo is behind bars permanently now, it will have absolutely no effect on the substance trade. This was written in 2019 and is correct. There are more statues of lions than there are actual lions. Zombie deer disease is spreading, like mad cow or scrapie but for deer. Basically, a protein misfolds in the brain and causes a chain reaction of other proteins misfolding. I mean, a fact that sounds false but actually makes me happy is that honey is one of the only foods in the world that never goes bad. It might get dirty or hardened, but it never expires. Also, honey has around 3 different super efficient ways of killing bacteria, which means that honey is frickin' awesome. In the USA, there were around 10,000 more self-deletions every year than all firearm-related deaths combined. We just don't talk about them. If we ever actually addressed the mental health of the country, I bet you would see both decrease massively. NASA did an experiment that revealed that out of every 1,000 cars on a highway, 60 people will intentionally go out of their way to run over animals they see on the side of the road. Out of those 60 vehicles, 98% of them were trucks or SUVs. An acre of hemp equals the same amount of paper as 3 acres of trees. We literally made efficiency illegal. The separation of 1 million and 1 billion. 1 million seconds equals 11 days, 1 billion seconds equals 31 years. Most prescription-based eyewear brands and major eyewear retailers are owned by one company, Luxottica. Who the frick thought that would be a great village name? I can't even. What the hell, Wales? That giraffes have horns because they act as shock absorbers when the baby giraffes fall flat on their head at birth. Giraffes don't have horns or antlers. There are specific terms that have additional requirements, such as keratinized sheaths for horns. Giraffes have ossicones. Basically, they're cartilage that then calcifies, making it hard. They also still have skin and fur on them, so they're all fuzzy. The fact that affluenza is an actual defense in court that's been used successfully to get people less time for heinous stuff. This one makes me absolutely furious and my skin is crawling even thinking about it. The guy from the DuPont family? Yeah, there's a special place in hell for that guy. Human immunodeficiency virus can take years to test positive, and in some cases an individual may never seroconvert, that means test positive. About 5% of people take longer than 2 months to produce antibodies. Testing at 3 and 6 months after possible exposure will detect almost all infections. However, there are no guarantees as to when an individual will produce enough antibodies to be detected by testing for the disease. If you have any unexplained symptoms, talk with your healthcare provider and consider retesting for human immunodeficiency virus. 40% of cops commit violence against members of their own household, about 4 times the national average. Almost more surprising as the national average is around 10% in the first place. Damn people, why are you so awful? The clan's cross-burning rituals. It probably has some sort of significant, complex history and reason, right? Wrong. They saw it happen in the birth of the nation and went, "Oh, that looks cool," and now they do that. It's literally, I saw it in a movie once. The clan is so frickin' stupid. That there's a thing such as an alpha wolf or an alpha dog. The guy who studied wolves and published the theory as a book spent many years trying to educate the public that he was in fact wrong based on further research, but instead he was dismissed and now this false information is still spread today. How did you survive a home invasion situation? I was in 7th grade, home alone after a half day, when suddenly there was a very hard knocking on my back door. I knew immediately something was off because we never have visitors, and my father didn't knock like that, and froze up in my room. I peeked out of my room, right in front of my front door, and suddenly it's quiet, so I go back to my room. As soon as I close my door, I hear glass shatter. Turned off my computer and TV and dove under the bed. For the next 40 minutes, I heard him thrashing around my living room and parents' room, then heard him leave. During this, I was on call with the cops who think I'm prank calling them, and they take 70 minutes to finally come over. The station is 3 streets away from my house. They come and investigate, only to find out it was our next-door neighbor that broke in and was actually looking for substance money. As it turns out that the previous person to live here did at-home haircuts and sold green herb on the side. The neighbor was arrested and his family moved out a week later. The only thing this guy took was my lunch money that I left on the counter outside for the next day. Guy came knocking on the front door and my mum and I ignored it. I was about 10 and my mum didn't want to answer the door to a stranger. He knocked a while and then went around the back and hopped the gate to try the back door. My mum got her 9mm out and opened the back door with it visible right before he tried to smash the glass. He took off running and was arrested on breaking and entering charges the next day after he broke into somebody else's apartment and couldn't run. My in-laws were home when a young guy broke into their house. They don't speak English very well, so my father-in-law, in the clearest English he could muster, loudly said, "Get me my rifle." At that point, the intruder left in a hurry. My wife sucks at thinking on her feet. I honestly think she'd say back, "But we don't have one of those." Tackled the guy. The hardest I've ever hit someone, and I'm a pretty big guy with a football background. He didn't see me coming. It felt very much like a do-or-die moment, so I didn't hold anything back. Broke a few of his bones, messed up his face, and got him sentenced to 6 years. 4 guys knocked on my buddy's door at 11 p.m. He lived with a bunch of guys, so this wasn't anything new. They bust in and held a gat to his neck and demanded the yay. He stammered that there weren't actually any substances, but they could take what they wanted. One guy held him there with the weapon as the others searched the house. Since they didn't find anything, they realized they had the wrong place and left. As they were leaving, the last guy said, "Sorry, this wasn't my idea." Yo, man, I'm imagining, "Oh, yeah, sorry, broski, wrong house." Haha, that's wonderfully awkward. I mean, it's great that they weren't hardened enough to just kill you for witnessing them, because I could imagine that you could probably still have called the cops on them and been able to spot their license plate or direction. No more from the author on whether such an action was taken. I was at my friend's place when it happened to him. We were both teenagers then. The guy thought everyone was sleeping and he got startled when he saw us. He bit my friend, his arm required stitches from the bite, and then just ran away. No idea who the guy was or what he wanted, never happened again, and we never saw him again. When I was 11, my closest friend had a home invasion involving a local gang. Her father fought back, they shanked him 14 times and shot him twice. They then held the wife and 2 of the children hostage. The third little girl slept through it all, tied them up and stole all the electronics and their car. After the robbers left, they went looking for Dad, and the youngest found him dead in the swimming pool. The entire suburb was devastated. He was the loveliest guy, had a black belt in karate, and did his best to fend off at least 4 intruders. After his death, they sold the house and moved across the country. Can't really blame them. Not me, but my aunt. She was at home alone in her backyard making food, and then she walked into the living room. She saw a couple of men in the middle of it carrying out the TV. It seems that they didn't think anyone was at home. They got surprised, dropped the TV, and ran out after she started screaming. The TV surprisingly made it. Not sure of the full details on that, but my aunt still has the same TV. I was in bed, asleep at 7 a.m. when I heard a loud bang. I thought nothing of it because of the large cat tree I have downstairs that's always getting knocked over, so I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. Not long after, my elderly cat comes running into my room, jumps on the bed, and tries to hide under the blankets. This immediately woke me up because that old fat cat hadn't run nor jumped on our bed for years. As I came to, I saw 2 men coming up my stairs. At that point, it felt like time stopped and somehow I ran incredibly fast at the same time. I jumped out of the bed and started screaming, "Get the F out of my house!" And I remembered thinking, while chasing these guys through my house and screaming again and again at the top of my lungs, that my voice sounds exactly like my brother, and I wondered how strange that was. I tackled one of them on my front lawn, but he struggled free and got away. I saw the getaway car and tried to keep repeating the license number, but it faded away in my mind as I was repeating it. I remember vividly being so mad at myself that I couldn't remember 7 numbers, and how stupid I was for not grabbing my phone. Looking back on the situation, there are so many things that happened that I never noticed, like how I fractured my arm slamming into the wall at the bottom of my stairs, or that I cut my feet up on the splintered wood of my front door. The adrenaline rush of a true fight-or-flight situation is something so strange it's almost impossible to accurately describe. The sense of time, not being aware of the pain and injuries for hours, and the hyper-focus on some details but the complete lack of others. Luckily, I wasn't seriously hurt and nothing was stolen, but I installed cameras all over my house the very next day. Girlfriend and I were sleeping in bed. Some dummy broke into our apartment, ran real quick when he saw my big, undressed, majestic gut. About 10 years ago, some guy broke down my mum's front door at 2 a.m. The noise of it woke her up and she came out of the bedroom and saw the guy messing with the papers on her desk, thinking there was money there maybe. My mum's little dog was barking for all he was worth, and my mum was yelling my name. The yelling and barking woke me upstairs in the guest room, so I came running down the stairs making a lot of noise. The guy ran off because of my mum or the barking dog or me coming down the stairs, who knows. And I ran out onto the street after him, but he was gone. I called the cops. They showed up in less than 5 minutes. The officer was very nice. The next day, my mum got a new door with a longer deadbolt. It's a very quiet neighborhood. We haven't heard of such a thing happening to anybody else. Not sure if the guy was crazy, at the wrong house, thought nobody was home, or something else. Freaked the fudge out. I let them take whatever they wanted and held my cat. It was friends of my sister. She'd screwed them on some substance deal, and I guess I was convenient. They took almost all of my electronics and raided the fridge. Locked the doors when it became clear that somebody was trying to break in. My husband and I were staying with a friend and her husband. Her stepson and elderly mother-in-law were also in the house. Somebody had heard the old lady had jewelry and decided to try their luck. We heard this later through the town grapevine. Said person then escalated to trying to kick his way in through the windows. They were leaded. My husband called the police while my friend and I tried to keep the old lady and child calm, and her husband and I screamed a lot and sort of flailed at the protruding feet with pokers from the old fireplace. On realizing there were more of us than there were of him, he ran off. Good thing too, the police never showed up. They called 5 days later to see, quote, if we still needed assistance. Bloody useless. In comparison, 6 months later, I arrived at work to discover the door and cash drawer had been jimmied and the £50 float nicked, and they were over and taking fingerprints inside the hour. I wonder why trust in the police is so low. It's a total mystery. And my wife was in the building for one. She came home from her morning shift to find 2 guys standing in our apartment, wrapping up their heist. She freaked out, they freaked out, then they ran, and she ran after for a while and called the cops. That was that. The amount of people who decide to pursue criminals on foot here is telling me that some people's flight or fight impulses resolve very differently to mine. I think if I walked in on this, I would faint and soil myself. So yes, two very viable, admirable, and equally effective solutions to the problem, right? My boyfriend Jay and I were staying with two friends of his, Jim and Jeremy. Jeremy had left the apartment an hour or so before Jay and I decided to go to bed. A few minutes after Jay fell asleep, I heard a knock on the door and Jim answered it. Turns out it was Jeremy, but he wasn't alone. Two guys that also lived in the apartment building forced Jeremy to knock at the door so that they could force their way in, as he didn't have his keys with him. Once they were inside, I could hear what sounded like a scuffle from where I was in the bedroom, with the door closed. I woke Jay up, and all of a sudden we heard two unknown voices yelling, "Get down! Get the F on the ground!" Jay wanted to go see what was going on, but I begged him to stay in the bedroom with me, which he did. After what seemed like a couple of minutes of arguing and fighting sounds, everything went absolutely silent. We opened the bedroom door to see Jim laying on the ground with what we later found out to be a barbed machete sticking out of his chest. Jeremy was calling 911. The apartment building didn't have a buzzer to let anyone into the building, so when the police got there, Jay let them in and showed them to the suite we were in. After a while, they separated us all and put the three of us into the back of 3 different police cars, where they left us while the paramedics tried to save Jim. Unfortunately, they weren't able to save him. He died at the apartment. I knew he was dead when the paramedics wheeled him out to the ambulance, but didn't leave for at least 5 minutes without working on him at all. The police took us to be questioned, again keeping us separated the entire time. About 12 hours later, they were ready to let us go, but told us we weren't allowed to go back to the apartment, as it was an active crime scene. We were dropped off by the police at a coffee shop with no money, phones, wallets, or even shoes on our feet, as they wouldn't let us take anything from the apartment before they put us in the police cars before being questioned. We ended up going to a friend's house where we stayed until we were let back into the apartment 4 or 5 days later. Once we were finally allowed back into the apartment, the first thing I had to do was clean up the blood, which I'm sure you can imagine was pretty hard to handle. It was pretty traumatic. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was in college and had the only room on the ground floor. I was bartending, so I got home at like 3:30 a.m. I'd just changed and gotten into bed when I heard someone fiddling with my window screen. I lived in a beach town, and I usually left my windows cracked open to hear the ocean as I fell asleep. I first thought it was one of my roommates who forgot their keys or something, but realized they would have called me first. So I flattened myself against the foot of my bed and the wall to look. It was a guy in a black hoodie with a box cutter cutting my window screen. As he was lifting himself to enter, I jumped onto my bed and kicked him as hard as I could on the chest. He fell into the parking lot, hit a bike rack, and was knocked unconscious. I slammed my window shut, bolted it, and called the cops. By the time they showed up, he was gone, but they found him 2 blocks away. His bag had zip ties and duct tape in it, and he had a record of the unspeakable act. The cops blamed me a bit for having my window open. I kept my window shut after that. My aunt and cousin had a legit home invasion happen many years ago. Gang members came to the door and barged in, whipped my cousin, and tore the house up. The intruders didn't speak English and apparently had the wrong house. After realizing it was the wrong house, they left. This was in Tucson, Arizona, probably about 20 years ago. Guy who stalked me broke into my house with his buddy. I had a messed up sleep schedule, so I was awake at 3 or so a.m. I grabbed my little dog and my phone and went to the basement. It was a little cellar, almost. A trapdoor in the floor with stairs that led down to a small space with the furnace, hot water tank, some of the other utilities. I got my dog and I into the crawl space. I'd had some cardboard on top of the door, so they didn't see it when it was closed. I turned my phone on silent and texted my best friend, asking her to call the cops for me. After the longest 15 minutes of my life, the cops eventually got there, arrested the felon and his buddy, and came to find me. These two monsters had what the police described to me as an R-word and disposal kit. Duct tape, lubricant, adult toys, a handsaw, and a box of heavy-duty big black garbage bags, which implied intent and planning. So they went away for conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit the unspeakable act, breaking and entering, and something else I can't remember. The guy who actually stalked me pinned it all on his buddy. So Buddy went away for 5 years and is still in prison because he can't not act like a psycho. While the stalker served 2.75 years of his 4-year sentence, he threw his buddy under the bus and took a plea deal for himself. Later got out on good behavior. Got a restraining order, which he violated a couple of times right away. It had been quiet for a bit until he got a girlfriend a couple of years ago. He told her his version, in which he was the victim and I was the villain who sent him to jail for nothing. So she sent me a long, nasty message telling me she'd find me and make me pay for it. So predictably, the cops go to talk to both of them, and I haven't heard from them since. It was nice of them to give you a message trail showing their intent for revenge and violent action. Hopefully that got them put away and out of your hair for the foreseeable future. Make sure you block them on everything and maybe keep the social media presence low. Not me, but my friend woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. As he was finishing up, the Ring camera motion detector picked up someone at his door at 3 a.m. My friend ran to the front door just as the intruder started trying to force it open. He watched on the Ring camera and was verging on panic, so he shouted at the intruder through the door. He wanted to sound tough and intimidating, but his courage failed him at the last minute and he said, "Get out of here, or I'm gonna F you." He meant to say up at the end, but that's when his nerve failed him. So instead of saying he was going to administer a beatdown, he just declared his intent to copulate. Through the Ring camera, he watched the intruder freeze up, look scared, and slowly back away from the door and to make a run for it. So I guess things worked out okay in the end. Postscript, yes, my friend handed the Ring footage to the cops. The cops arrested the guy a day or two later for something else. My door was kicked in at just after 2 a.m. I walked out into the living room holding my weapon. I said, "I'm armed," loudly, and at that point I heard someone chamber around. So I just started shooting. I hit him twice and he died. I have no regrets. Police told me he had just gotten out of prison a few days before for a similar crime. It was about 4 years ago. For some reason, for the few hours leading up to the event, I was feeling uneasy and on edge. This was 3 hours prior, and I even consciously thought that it was weird because I had a buddy over and I was playing my favorite video game. But I just couldn't enjoy myself. Unusually, my father was also up very late watching the TV in the lounge, and he too later commented that he felt like he was being watched. Approximately an hour after he turned into bed, everything happened all at once. We believe at least 3 men tried to quietly pull a window out of our double doors. They were the French door types, to get in. But they dropped the pane, and when it shattered, everyone was alerted. Shouting, barking, and screaming commenced, and then they tried to break down the door to get in and to grab anything convenient. Unfortunately for them, we had a large bird cage blocking the door on the inside, and they couldn't get in. They decided to make their getaway, and while doing so, one of them threw a brick at the window my father was looking through and broke that pane as well. While this was all going down, my buddy and I stayed in my room, door shut and locked. I grabbed a nearby skateboard, the only thing I had that could be weaponized. It felt like everything was happening very slowly, especially because I could hear but not see what was going on. For reference, we have a freestanding house that, at the time, had an empty plot next door. We think they jumped over a concrete wall as there's palisade fencing in front of the house. A guy kicked the door in to beat up my roommate who had just got home from a late night of gambling. I was in the back and heard the commotion. I called 911 and they didn't take me seriously. "Can you just leave?" Until I said it sounded like someone was going to get murdered. The cops came, I was told to leave the house by the cops. I walked in front of the house to greet some Glocks to my cell phone. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, the walls, and the rest. The fight had broken windows and spread into the hallway and kitchen. I backed out of the house and was dragged across the yard by the cops. I told them I didn't see anyone in the house. They entered and there was commotion when they found my roommate hiding next to his bed. The police were upset I didn't see him. He was dragged out on a stretcher and the neighbors watching probably figured I beat the crap out of him. I was fixing the windows when he walked home from the hospital, still wearing a gown and hospital slippers. He didn't want to pay to be admitted. He looked like he'd escaped an asylum. We never spoke about it after he repaired the damage. My tip, just say murder when you call 911. A lot of police will come very quickly. An ex and I were coming home from a night out and the front door of her condo was open. She started the "you didn't close the door" thing, so we walked up and I turned on the light, and there was an old man there with her jewelry box in his hand. She knew who it was her downstairs neighbor. So I stood in the doorway and called 911 and kept him there until they showed up. When the cops showed up, I looked down, it was a second floor entry, and I saw an old lady hiding behind the dumpsters. I said, "He's not going anywhere, but the lady behind the dumpster might," and the cops got her and our DVD player. I ID'd it by saying Talladega Nights should be in there, and it was. They were both whacked out of their minds. The lady swore she found the DVD player in the parking lot, and the guy's excuse for breaking into the house was that he was outside and saw elves climbing up into her balcony and going in the house, and he was going to get the valuables out so they couldn't get to them. Well, this is at least more standoffish and weird than outright horrifying like some of them. I don't know whether we put the fact that the guy didn't just try to shoulder barge past you down to him being really out of it or just being a gentle soul. Slept through it. It was the last night we spent in the house before moving into another in the same city. The moving company finished that day. 5 guys tied up my dad and threatened to do awful things to my mum and I. We both slept through the whole thing. They held him at weapon point. 3 hours later, we had no TV, phones, some wine, and clothes were stolen. We really just kept what was important to us that night. When they left, my dad got his restraints off and woke us up. Luckily, they didn't take the cars, so we drove in our neighborhood until we found someone to call help. Some guy was sneaking his girlfriend back into her parents' house and begged us not to make a huge noise, but we were a few houses down, so no worries. It's like 2 completely different movies being filmed at the same time. I was in bed upstairs, home from work because I was sick. Someone knocked on my front door. I didn't answer because I felt like absolute garbage. A little while later, I heard a strange thud in my kitchen. My cats, who were laying with me, became alert, which made me nervous, so I went downstairs to investigate. As I was coming down the stairs, I saw a young man in my kitchen and another outside the kitchen window. I yelled, "What the truck?" in a deeper tone than I normally have. I think that was some kind of instinct. They got scared and ran for the back door, which was locked. I actually had to explain to the inside guy that you have to do the top lock first. He shoved a chair at me, unlocked the door, and ran off with his friends. I wasn't scared in the moment, only afterward. In fact, I kind of felt bad for the guy while it was happening. He looked like he was maybe 15 and scared shirtless that someone was home. I was sleeping after a night shift. I woke up and went to the kitchen to see 2 guys working on my sliding glass door with a screwdriver. I was still half asleep, and it took a few seconds to register. I got my .22 rifle, which was my only weapon at the time, and opened up the side door. Their getaway driver was parked across the street and started honking. They bolted. I walked out in my underwear with my weapon to watch them peel out, but I'm sure they would have gotten in if they'd had another 10 minutes. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.